Book boys.
Book fucking boys!
Book boys.
We are back with Zarathustra.
Episode 6, baby.
Part 2.
Part 2.
Part 2.
Zarathustra.
It's
We're
been a
doing it.
while. I think we've been meaning to do this for like 3 episodes probably.
Yeah, it's I gotta be honest, like, it's a good book to study, but it's a pain in the ass to read.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
It's, I think I've talked about this in the last episode, but like, yeah, this book is like, it just kicks your ass, like, when you're reading it.
It does. This is, when you're feeling especially like philosophically spicy on a Sunday, you pull this out of the shelf, you read one random chapter, and your philosophical demand is filled for the year.
Yeah, literally.
Like reading a whole a part of the book, like 40 pages, is so draining.
It really is. It is one of those books, like, what I do really like about it is, like, the more you put into it, the more you get out of it, for sure.
Yes.
There's like, it is very rewarding to read, but it just requires a lot of effort.
It is incredibly dense.
So, yeah, it's part 2. What happens in part 2? Well, we end part 1 with Zarathustra. He, like, abandons his disciples. And in part 2, he returns to the mountain and goes into kind of this solitary state for many years, withdraws from mankind, and has these kind of like quite challenging solitary experience. And he starts having these weird dreams where like this kid's like coming up to him and like showing him a mirror, and in the mirror he's seeing like the face of a devil, and he interprets this as like a sign that his teachings are being distorted and that he needs to come down and like reestablish himself, recover his lost disciples, and just build his brand again, right? Recover his lost followers.
Yeah.
So he goes down, and we get there's like a lot of real key concepts that are like talked about in this section, mainly like the Übermensch. We get like the first talk about Superman.
Yeah.
We get like talk about the will to power, and more stuff about like the death of God and stuff. And there's some connection with like different kinds of morality that is like quite key to a lot of his work, I think, right?
And he basically just shits on a bunch of different groups in this chapter. Himself included. He's quite self-critical in this one.
Yeah. And then it finishes. There's like, this final section where he's like holding back, or he's not quite strong enough to like say what he wants to say, and so he again, I think, withdraws from his disciples, and that's how the chapter ends. So yeah, he's established himself, right, in this. He's already like established, and I guess the first chapter, compared to the first chapter, this one is much more kind of dense, I think, when it comes to the like all these themes being discussed. There are like the Übermensch and the will to power are like really, really core concepts to this book. Yeah, talked about a lot.
Alright, should we just start by chronologically going through the second part? So you mentioned the first one is Das Kind mit dem Spiegel, the child with the mirror.
Yeah.
And yeah, so how do we interpret Zarathustra seeing a dream where a child shows him a mirror depicting himself as a devil?
How do we interpret it? Well, okay. Well, we know he interprets it as this, like, yeah, he's being, his teachings are being distorted. How should we interpret it? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I guess first of all, why a child?
I think that the reason seeing a child is like this sort of uninhibited, like clear perspective.
Innocence, and another big theme of children in this book is shamelessness.
Honesty in a way, right? So, and I think as well, like, it's a, I don't know, it feels like very, obviously he's seeing a demon in the mirror, that's like, or he says a devil in my version. There's obviously like clear religious connotations, but even just the idea of having this kind of vision, this like really abstract vision, and interpreting it as if you're some kind of like, I don't know, yeah, I keep forgetting the word, but like some like tribal like, what's the word of the people that like see into the future and shit?
Fortune teller?
Not a fortune teller, but
seer?
Yeah, maybe you could say seer or something, like a kind of like a prophet maybe or something.
Uranaishi. Yeah, there was one. This is completely stupid, but just after he looks in the mirror, there's can you open the? This is gonna be ass again with me having the German and you having the English, but where is the mirror part in your?
When I looked into the
mirror, no, can you read this one? Just this one part.
With these words, Zarathustra sprang up, not, however, as if gasping for air, but rather like a seer and a singer whom the spirit had moved. His eagle and his serpent regarded him with amazement, for a dawning happiness lit up his face like the dawn. I
just love the like self-narration, like. And Philip realized he had 1 hour to the deadline. So he sprang up and went to his computer. Not in a lame and stupid way, but really confident and cool. And everyone liked him.
Yeah. It was totally cool, guys. It looked really cool.
Yeah. It's just Nietzsche writing like, this guy is really cool. I want you guys to know how cool this guy is.
This guy has Matrix sunglasses on, but in like a really cool way.
Alright, sorry.
Yeah, we don't really need to spend too much time on this chapter, I don't think.
Yeah. So we're back, new adventure, and now we get kind of a puzzling chapter. Yeah. Important one. Auf den glückseligen Inseln.
Yeah, so on the blissful islands. And I think it might be the third part that we hear more about the blissful islands. Like
it's referenced a bunch of times, yeah.
Describe this is kind of like the place where most people live, right? This kind of like state of not really being involved in like the real like hard edge, like the freest parts of the world and the most dangerous parts of the world. Rather, it's like kind of like society, right? Blissful islands.
Blissful ignorance, maybe.
Ignorance, yeah. And this is where his disciples obviously are, right? But this chapter's mainly about like it is about will and freedom, and in this chapter he directly connects the two. Like, your will can create freedom for you. He says here, willing liberates. That is the true doctrine of will and freedom. Thus Zarathustra teaches you. And this is in a way like also a criticism of God as like a creator. So willing, like Zarathustra talks about creativity, but it's not creativity in like it's creating. I think it's maybe the better way of like interpreting it.
Right. Well, he conceptualizes, he criticizes the idea of God in the sense that it is. I think in English it probably says like something like supposition, maybe. No, on that page, flip it. I think you got mark too.
Yeah. God is God is a supposition, but who could imbibe all the anguish of the supposition without dying? Shall the Creator be robbed of his faith and the eagle of his soaring into the heights? God is a thought that makes all that is straight crooked and all that stands giddy. What? Would time be gone and all that is transitory only be a lie? Oh,
okay. Yeah. That's actually not the part.
There's more actually. God is a supposition, but I want your supposing to be bounded by conceivability. God is a supposition, but I want you're supposing to reach no further than your creating will.
And he's like, can you create a God?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Well, if not, then shut up about gods and whatnot. So
yeah.
I think here we have the idea of, or rather, we're criticizing the idea to invent a all-explaining God for just shit you can't explain.
Exactly, yeah.
So whatever you can't, create or explain in with your mind, with whatever human conception is available at the time, you can't just say, well, here's what we can explain and everything else is God,
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like, my crops failed this year. It's because of God.
Yeah.
Or it's like, is it because of God or is it because you forgot to water them?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a quote here as well. Creation, that is the great redemption from suffering and life's easement. But that the creator may exist, that itself requires suffering and much transformation.
Yes.
So, yeah, I think it's the idea of resting on this belief that you are out of control, right? You don't have your own will to better your own situation.
And we also get a big puzzle piece to the question, what actually the fuck is the Übermensch? Where he says, I'm just looking for it in your book. Oh no. Okay, I'm just gonna
give me a keyword. Don't speak German.
No.
I won't tolerate that.
Not you yourself, perhaps. Something like that.
Why don't you just give me a word?
Übermensch.
Okay.
2 fathers and 4 fathers.
I remember this. This is quite close to the beginning now.
Yeah.
It's literally after the bit. It's literally after the bit we just talked about.
Oh, okay.
Perhaps you... Okay, could you create a god? So be silent about all gods, but you could surely create a Superman. Perhaps not you yourselves, my brothers, but you could transform yourselves into forefathers and ancestors of the Superman. And let this be your finest creating. Right?
So here's the idea that, this unreachable ideal of the Superman, whether or not it is unreachable in reality, if we say... what is it in math? X goes against infinity.
Sure, yeah.
It doesn't actually matter if some time down the line we achieve it. The idea is that you build up human knowledge and, the civilization, I guess, would be the definition of that.
Yeah.
Sure. Over time and, create something higher for what is after.
And I think a culture as well is probably one important thing that you'd be talking about here. Especially as in a way, obviously religion is super closely tied to culture, and in lots of ways is culture, right? The implication of a creator being the sole reason why certain things happen to you, it can exist without there being a god, right? My crops failed. I don't know. Blame whatever thing that you kind of want to blame it on.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be based in anything. So I think that's the nut of this section.
I marked a big section.
We get a mention of the poets as well, and talking about poetry and people who manufacture things in terms of society, in relation to society, whether it's artists or intellectuals.
Yeah.
We got a lot of mention of that in this part.
All right. Next one is kind of big as well.
Yeah.
Von den Mitleidigen.
So, of the compassionate.
Yeah. So
this is quite a strong chapter.
Yeah, and this is one of those that is... So in German, compassionate is, we say, mitleiden, which means suffering with or suffering together. And is it this chapter? I know one of the criticisms raised in this book is that compassion is like an easy way, in modern terms we would maybe say virtue signaling. Like, without actually doing any work yourself, you can pass yourself off as compassionate. You gain kind of moral high ground without actually having to do the suffering.
Right.
But even then, if we take the German literal word of suffering with or suffering together, what good are you doing by suffering? By just, if you're compassionate, you're just increasing the suffering in the world. There was one person suffering, and now you're suffering with them. So now there's two people suffering. Good fucking job.
I mean, there seems like a problem with the not like a problem with the translation necessarily, but like
it's a challenge.
Yeah, it definitely is. Like, I think like so it is like an interesting problem. Like, why if you want to like maximize happiness for people or whatever,
right.
Like if that's like if you value like people feeling positively, then why make yourself feel bad for someone else?
Right.
And I think I don't fucking know, that's a hard one.
Right.
I think I wouldn't say people instinctively feel it, but maybe they do, I don't know.
This is also a big here comes the controversial. This is a big male female thing, I feel.
Okay.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like on the whole, usually guys, like if someone has an issue or some problem, guys always want to immediately like, alright, so how can we fix it?
Well, I would say this at least like the masculine solution.
Response, yeah,
for sure.
Whereas women are often happy if you just listen to them, like, and are compassionate, suffer with them.
Yeah,
they're not necessarily interested in how to fix it, or maybe they are in the long term.
Yeah, maybe not immediately.
But not immediately, yeah.
Well, yeah, and I get it actually. Yeah,
I can understand it. I don't get it.
I think
yeah.
What was I gonna say? I think that's broadly true. I mean, we associate like masculinity is definitely, I think, more associated with like immediate problem solving and like I think one thing that I find like about some, I get it's mainly girls, I guess. It's definitely not all girls, but like some people we know who are like the kind of fake compassionate sort of thing, or like, and I think this probably counts actually.
There was an interesting I don't know, meme. It was like difference between like in the US, like difference between God, what was it? Was it East Coast and West Coast? No, I think it was like I think it was East and West Coast. So if you have a flat tire on the West Coast, people will be super nice to you and be like, "Oh no, what happened? I'm sure it'll be fine," and they'll encourage you, and then they drive off.
Yeah.
Whereas on the East Coast, some like chubby dude will come out of his truck and he'll like, "Man, what the fuck you doing? Come on, let me fix that shit for you."
That's funny.
So he'll be super rude, but he'll actually help you.
Yeah. There's that reminds me actually of 8 years ago I listened to a podcast. I can't even remember what it was, or someone was talking about, I think it was maybe like a musician or an actor or something, talking about the difference between London and Los Angeles. And he described like when he went to Los Angeles, like he met like hundreds of people in like a few weeks and like made loads and loads of friends.
Yeah.
But like after he was there for like a couple months, like no one like really spoke to him. So you go there and you meet all these people and like, oh hey man, yeah, how's it going? Yeah, cool. And then you never really hear from them again. It's just like done. And then living in London for like 3 years, no one fucking talks to him, but he has like a couple of like really, really close friends.
Yeah.
And or like, you know, and people are just fucking rude to him. It's the same kind of thing.
Yeah,
right?
and I think the general concept we're getting at here is kind of what is expressed with the critique of compassion here. And it's also what I think is at the core of a lot of modern problems when we look at, you know, whatever it is where in politics where we have compassion, be it compassion for the poor,
right,
or, you know, compassion for the planet. I think the danger with compassion is that it's very easy instant gratification, very easy instant moral high ground, without having to do any actual work. And chances are, just by expressing your compassion but not knowing what you're talking about, chances are you're just going to muck it up.
Yeah, for sure. I think like appearing compassionate is like one of the most like effective things I think politicians can achieve. Right?
Yeah.
Like, and they try really hard to do that, like kissing babies and buying pizzas and shit. But
about voters as well, you know.
How do you mean?
Like,
wanting to do things because they want to appear compassionate.
Right. It's like I voted Green Party and now I'm good, you know.
Right.
I've done my part.
Yeah, sure.
So now I'll just, I don't know, fly to Mallorca and down some beers. I don't know.
Yeah, I know you're getting out for sure. It's definitely an issue in politics. So let's talk about the chapter specifically.
Yeah.
So there's one thing I thought was quite interesting. So he says, "Truly, I do not like them, the compassionate who are happy in their compassion. They are too lacking in shame. If I must be compassionate, I still do not want to be called compassionate. And if I am compassionate, then it's preferably from a distance."
It's funny how we mark the same page.
Nice.
Yeah, so the idea is that, you know, compassion, even if you are compassionate, it's not necessarily bad, but you don't from a distance. So you don't want to
you don't want to like do it in a way which directly gains, which is like set up to give you like too much gain. I guess,
if you're getting too much back from your compassion, then it's a vice rather than a virtue. I think what we're saying.
It has risk of becoming that.
Yeah.
This made me think about in like school, for example, and like any environment where there are like children alongside adults, and there's like a clear kind of power hierarchy thing going on. Like, I was listening to another podcast recently, and they were talking about like creepy teachers, and like they're describing like one guy who, one teacher who was like, yeah, in my classroom, like I don't care if you say fuck, like we can talk about like football and shit, and like being all like, you know, friendly and funny with these kids. And then it turned out he was like, I don't know if it was like properly proved, but that he was like being predatory. And like, it's like, I think many people have like a story that they've heard of like some, like the school that they went to or something, or like some school of a friend or whatever, where something like that's happened. And like it's like this compassion from a distance has not been, it's like, and it's quite hard to describe, but like here, like if there's like a understanding that you can like, God, this is really hard to explain.
Go on.
My point is that people will use things like compassion in order to break down these kind of barriers between people, like children and their teachers, in order to abuse them, right? And by appearing like compassionate to a child, you can like, I don't know, as a teacher, like you have responsibility, right? to set up distance with your children, with your students, and like you can do everything and be as compassionate as you want but you also recognize that there are certain limits, and those limits are there to kind of prevent abuse happening, right? And I think that's kind of one thing that's being pointed to here. Do you understand what I'm saying?
So in the specific example you brought up, I don't really see how the teacher's behavior would be compassionate. It's more like buddy kind of. But I get the bigger point you're making.
It's not compassionate in the sense of like we're suffering together.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I mean, even then though, like, you know, I think it's about exploitation happens when people are like vulnerable, right? And like when if you're compassionate in a vulnerable situation,
right.
It's like the rebound. No, not rebound, but like, you know, the whole like someone's just broken up with their like partner or whatever, their boyfriend or their girlfriend.
Right.
So like you should swoop in and like get them now or whatever.
Yeah.
It's a similar kind of thing, right? It's like using compassion to get close to someone in a way that is exploitative.
Yeah, that's definitely a thing as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is obviously separate to a lot, like all the political stuff we're talking about, but I think it's definitely relevant.
No, yeah, that's another weakness of compassion.
We don't really have we have systems to get. We have systems of avoiding that, but it is also sad that because that happens, there need to be these like rules, for example. Like I think a lot of like when I think about my in fact I've talked about this with my girlfriend, like her experience of being in high school, being like quite close to a lot of her teachers. There being like a clear boundary between them, but still managing to like get very close to them.
Yeah.
And then contrasting that with the atmosphere today, which is very much kind of like there's not the same. It's almost as if the idea that a teacher can be compassionate or like can have a relationship with their students is becomes so taboo that teachers almost have no relationship with their students, and which is obviously like really sad. And I don't think it's probably not like completely a result of like abuse happening. I don't think that's the reason why, but it's like when you create too many boundaries between people, you end up losing out on fruitful relationships with them, right?
Yeah, and it's like no, this is this is not an appropriate example. Scrap that one.
We're gonna do the Mongol joke.
No.
Wait, no, it's not a joke about Mongolians.
Oh, Nick, I do have something to share. No. And I was gonna say, I guess the other extreme, like where, you know, instead of building boundaries, you have the compassionate boss. I think Slavoj Žižek calls it the postmodern boss.
Right.
Where the traditional authoritarian boss tells you, you know, do your work and shut the fuck up, and there is a clear, like, you know, he's the authority, and he's very totalitarian and direct in exercising his power, and therefore affords the workers the luxury of hating him.
Yes, yeah.
So, you know, the workers can basically say, oh, fuck that guy, you know, he's always bossing us around and so on. Whereas the compassionate modern boss, or the postmodern boss, is like, you know, he invites you to dinner with his wife, and like, you know, are you feeling okay lately? You know, you've been looking sad at work, and you know, obviously, you know, it's still like if you're gonna become a problem at the workplace, you're still fired.
Yes, yeah.
But you know, he's like, oh, are you feeling okay? Can we do anything for you? And it's like this friendly relationship between, I guess, you know, what should be an economic contract of, you know, authority and subordinate, right? becomes obscured by this kind of soft power.
Yeah.
Which I think is really strong in Japan as well.
Oh, totally. I mean, I was going to say, like, in Japan we have... it's not as popular nowadays, but they still do really exist, especially in the bigger companies. Like, dorms and even housing complexes and whole apartments that are owned by companies.
Yeah.
So, like, you'll have, like, a whole apartment block that's owned by, like, Toyota, for example.
And they're quite
like,
popular.
Oh, yeah, super popular. And people live there because, I think they're generally a bit cheaper, and, like, I guess, like, they're probably kind of encouraged to do so as well. Like, but obviously, like, this is sold as, like, the company taking care of you and being, like, a part of your family, which I think is kind of fucking horrible.
Yeah.
When things start becoming like this, like, if a family is, like, a pretty strong social contract, right? Probably the strongest social contract, like, in society, right? And so it's not something you can lightly opt out of.
Yeah.
And if the company's like family, then or if they try to be like family, I think that's a problem. And yeah, if your boss is super nice to you, you're gonna find it much more difficult to put your foot down.
Exactly.
Especially if you find out, like, when you do that and they flip their shit on you, and you're like, caught you.
Yeah. Okay. We should continue the chapter.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to read the part where he wipes his hand. It's very close to what we just read.
Therefore I wash my hand when it has helped the sufferer. Therefore I wipe my soul clean as well. For I saw the sufferer suffer, and because I saw it, I was ashamed on account of his shame, and when I helped him, then I sorely injured his pride. Great obligations do not make a man grateful. They make him resentful. And if a small kindness is not forgotten, it becomes a gnawing worm.
So again, being compassionate from afar, right? If you truly, and this takes us back to Dostoevsky. This takes us back to the scene in Notes from the Underground, where the prostitute saw the main character vulnerable.
Yeah.
And she was compassionate toward him, and she helped him out. And, being seen in that vulnerable sub-position is so shameful and so painful, especially, I think, for men as well, that, you're not doing the sufferer any good.
Yeah.
Which is why he says, he washes the hand that, in the Bible we have, the Pontius Pilatus, it's the Roman guy who was responsible for declaring, like, the crusade against Christians or whatever, or sentencing Jesus to death.
Right.
And he was like, I wash my hands of innocence, or something, right? Kind of like a excuse. Which Zarathustra here flips and says, like, well, no, I wash my hands if they help the sufferer.
Yeah.
Because I saw them suffer.
Yeah.
And
and it's as if you're, like, causing them harm, right? Or it is, right?
Or and obviously also on a case by case basis, but sometimes chances are the help you did is actually less beneficial to them. And having exposed their vulnerability and their suffering, and having that feeling of shame is probably torturing them a lot more than whatever good your help did.
Yeah, I find this difficult, to be honest, because like, this only works if someone actually does feel shame for being helped, and I don't think I don't know why being helped should actually feel like a shameful thing. Like, I don't know why
it should, but it does.
For some people at least. I don't know. I do get it, and I do. I think it depends. It depends on some things. I feel like I feel it more with some people or in some situations than others.
For sure, yeah. It's hard to pinpoint exactly when that feeling is elicited and when it is not. Because obviously sometimes you're generally happy about someone's help, right?
Yeah.
But other times, it's...
I know, like, sometimes, like, if my girlfriend's family do things for me, I often feel embarrassed about that. And I think, because they have, like, helped me a lot since I've been here.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, that's probably one thing, yeah. But then, you know, I think friends, when you're on, like, a mutual level, even if it is something that exposes, like, weakness, I don't feel as shameful in the same way, I don't think.
Well, it doesn't even have to necessarily expose weakness, but something like the fact that the assumption that you need help sometimes. I'll give you an example. Okay. This will be a good meme. This is a small thing, but we have a mutual friend. Speaks German.
Yeah.
And also speaks English. And I also speak German. I also speak English. So, but, you know...
Because Phil's German.
Yeah, because I'm German.
Yeah.
But you could say that probably, on the whole, my speaking German is better than that friend's, but that friend's speaking English is better than mine.
Okay.
So sometimes there will be a difficult word in English, and you know, I'm just reading it and I understand it immediately. I have no problem with it, but the friend will go out of their way to explain the word to me.
Right.
Like, as if I don't fucking get it. So then it's like, you know, if we apply it to this chapter, and I'm not actually that bothered by it, but if we apply it to this chapter, it's like, okay, the helping hand has shown their compassion. They've shown, oh, I'm generous, I'm so
Yeah,
much.
sure.
But the person who is quote unquote helped,
They've not. Yeah,
they've only been humiliated, basically.
Yeah. Or just, or even just annoyed.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay, exposing someone's shame breeds their resentment. How about that? That's pretty much written here, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to apply always, but I think it's a good thing to keep in mind. You know.
Oh, 100%. So, like, I think it is possible to be like, I mean it's definitely possible to be grateful when people do things for you, but it's like there are points where people can be too nice, or like they can do too much for you,
right?
And yeah, the assumption is that you like can't take care of yourself, or like it then kind of develops this like meaning behind it, but like you can't do anything, you can't take care of yourself, which is demeaning, I guess.
And even in the case that it is when we assume that it is in fact true that you cannot take care of yourself, and the help of the other is needed and is generous, you know, this could still breed resentment, right? You can still feel bitter about it.
Yeah, I suppose so.
So we in the Christmas Carol we talked about how in real life generosity is sometimes abused. And it's not like you help someone and it's all nice and dandy and, you know, everyone goes about their merry way. But, you know, sometimes even if you're generous and you're rightfully generous, without, you know, demeaning them or whatever, they can still interpret from that, you know, they see their own inadequacy, I guess.
Yeah.
And it can still be breeding resentment, you know, and that's why generous people get abused sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, absolutely, yeah. And also I think as well, like, wanting to be helped and also wanting to when people feel the need to pay things back. I think there are definitely some people that when they're generous they have absolutely no expectation of like gaining return, and that can be kind of problematic sometimes because people can give to others on the assumption that they also think that it's okay not to give back.
Right.
But the person that they're giving to actually has like strong values about like returning favors and stuff like that, right? And you can be too generous with people who believe like that, especially if they don't have much to offer back, right?
There's this is maybe one of my favorite passages. Go on, you first.
I was gonna say, like, you hear stories about in Japan of like, you know, like there aren't that many homeless people in Japan compared to like other countries around the world, but there are stories about like people giving money to homeless people and like homeless people either rejecting it or like running down the street to try and give it back to them and stuff. And there's kind of like beyond just not accepting charity, it's like not wanting to feel indebted to someone else.
Right, indebted or even
Yeah.
resentful.
It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite parts of Natsume Soseki's Botchan, which is a famous Japanese novel, is when the main character, he's a new teacher at the school, and he arrives there, and he's not friendly with anyone, and he has especially a quarrel with this math teacher.
Right.
So he's an English teacher, and he has a quarrel with the math teacher, and they're on really bad terms. And they... what was it? So they go out for food, and... Right, okay. No, they go out for food, and the math teacher treats the English teacher.
Right.
And so this is when they just met. But then the students make up nasty rumors and basically pit them against each other. Right. So then they're fighting basically. And so, since this bond of friendship was now broken and now they're on the warpath, the English teacher puts the amount of money on the math teacher's desk.
Really?
He returns. It's like, I don't want to be indebted to this guy.
Yeah.
I don't want to be indebted to this. He's not my friend.
Yeah.
But he's too proud to take it, so it just sits there for a couple of weeks. And then by the end of the book, they make up, and so the math teacher takes it back.
Right.
And I just love that image so much.
That's very cool. Yeah.
It's like with treating people and stuff. It's like if it's a friend, you can truly treat someone and really not expect anything in return.
Yeah. It's these social contracts, isn't it? That's like an interesting concept in sociology, I think. Yeah, cool.
Okay, we dug deep.
We've already been 40 minutes and we're on the chapter.
Chapter 2.
Jesus.
So okay, but I am a giver or something like that. Just after what we just read.
I, however, am a giver. I give gladly as a friend to friends, but strangers and the poor may pluck the fruit from my tree for themselves. It causes less shame that way.
Right? What we just talked about, basically.
Yeah, literally. There's another bit at the end of the chapter, talking about being like betrayed, or not betrayed, but like being wronged. It says, and should your friend do you a wrong, then say, I forgive you what you did to me, but that you did to yourself, how could I forgive that?
Right.
Which is kind of like, it's a badass like sentence, and it's beautifully written. So yeah, how can you? And that seems like quite like a very compassionate thing to say to someone as well, right? Like you're holding someone up to a certain standard, and that's the Zarathustra way. Like it's like why aren't you treating yourself with the same respect that I hold for you, for example?
Yeah.
Or like why aren't you why aren't you holding yourselves up to better standards? Don't worry about me, like worry about yourself, kind of thing.
Yeah, and it kind of explains the idea of the bigotry of low expectations as well.
Right, sure.
So often, in not to like go back to politics, but we often see people being quote unquote compassionate. We have to give money to these groups and these groups. We have to help these groups and these groups.
Yeah.
By which, by that they want to show off their compassion. But really underneath that is the bigotry of low expectations. Is that you hold these people to such low standards that they cannot do it by themselves. They're simply not. They're incapable, basically. And that is the kind of humiliation, the shame that comes with compassion again.
For sure.
Okay, I have two more parts in this chapter I want you to read. Sorry. Just after what you read earlier, with the beggars and the...
So beggars should be entirely abolished.
No. Yeah, but I thought that was funny, but...
Yeah, I was like, this is...
I was like, bitch, please.
the Nazis love this one.
No, the one with the giver. However, I'm a giver. Where is that?
I haven't a giver yet.
Then the next.
That is the...
No, the next one.
Oh.
Maybe. The worst. What is it? But worst of all, yeah.
Bad conscience.
But worst of all.
But worst of all are petty thoughts. Truly, better even to have done wickedly than to have done pettily. Yeah. More?
Yeah, more.
To be sure, you will say, delight in petty wickedness spares as many a great evil deed. But here one should not wish to be spared. The evil deed is like a boil. It itches and irritates and breaks forth. It speaks honourably. Behold, I am a disease, thus speaks the evil deed. That is its honesty. But the petty thought is like a canker. It creeps and hides and wants to appear nowhere, until the whole body is rotten and withered by little cankers. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. I love that so much.
I think that's like... Yeah, there's a lot to say about honesty even in doing bad things.
Yeah.
Which is kind of counterintuitive because I don't think anyone wants to admit to themselves that they're doing something bad.
It's always
admit to themselves and admit to other people. I think a lot of people don't know that they're doing things that are bad.
Yeah, okay. I think because this really ties in so well with this chapter because I think it's not necessarily that you're presenting to the world, I am evil, I am whatever, God dictator, and I'm Hitler, I'm going to kill you all.
Yeah.
But there is a difference in, for example, if we take the idea of doing evil under the guise of compassion,
right,
and doing evil by virtue of we're better than you.
Yeah.
So you can say like the Nazis like Lebensraum.
Yeah.
Is like, so our race is better than your race, so therefore we're just going to take your shit and kill you.
Yeah.
And, within their worldview, I guess that's just. But of course it's blatantly evil, and it's kind of honest in its...
Yeah, for sure.
In its wickedness. Whereas other forms of petty, compassionate evil are, what makes them so tricky and perhaps worse is that they're not obvious, which is, I think, why it is so easy to draw the line when the right goes too far, and it's so hard to draw the line when the left goes too far.
Yeah, sure.
Because the right, when the right goes too far, it always, it's from a third person perspective, it's so easy to see like, oh yeah, you're just saying you're better than everyone else and you want to kill everyone else.
Yeah.
Whereas when the left goes too far, it's always masked by compassion.
Sure.
And that's why it's so hard to point out.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it's much more difficult to have conversations about it, I think. Because there's this baseline. And the thing is, I think most people, it's like, when it's like mainstream politics, I think, it can be quite difficult to have those conversations. But yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I get you totally.
Like if you sit and like your average Nazi down, and you're like, so how would you justify all the shit that you did?
Yeah.
What it comes down to is probably like, well, we're the better race and they're the inferior race, so therefore we just take all their shit and kill them, and it's just.
Whereas
which is obviously horrible.
Yeah.
Whereas if you sit like whatever Soviet or kind of guy down, it's like, well, we just want to help out the poor, and we see all this oppression, and we have to invert the hierarchy. And, we're the good guys, right?
We're being exploited. Which justifies, supplanting the oppressor. And
well, it's not even we're exploited. It's I want to help the exploited. Right?
Okay, sure.
Right.
If we're talking about politics. Yeah, good point.
And this is, I really like this metaphor of, in English it said canker. What is it?
Canker, yeah.
I don't know what the fuck that is. In German it says mushroom. like
A mushroom.
there's mushrooms growing in the tree.
That's a good. That's a.
And making it morose or whatever.
Yeah, sure.
Morose. Yeah.
Something you can't see.
Mm.
Cool. All right, we should really move on.
Yes.
Next, we have Of the Priests, which is, as you can imagine, a pretty hard hit.
Yeah, he's just taking a big poopy on the church.
Yes. It's a big steamy mud pie. So what do we have to say about this chapter?
I have one part I like, which is, oh god, yeah, how do we find this? It's here. Better songs.
Better songs.
Better songs. And it's like middle of the chapter.
Any other words?
Sing.
Oh, great. I have sings its songs sweet melancholy.
No.
They would have to sing better songs. They would have to sing better songs to make me believe in their Redeemer. His disciples would have to look more redeemed.
Just that sentence alone. So, he's obviously taking a swing at religion here and at the church and so on. But, I think if we think of the current situation religion is in and Christianity is in and so on, and even, I guess, Islam or whatever, to win over, this whole game of we have the truth and God is the truth or whatever, if you don't obey you will be put into hell and all that stuff, those kind of arguments don't work on the modern person anymore. So I think if you really want to show that your religion is true, that your Messiah is true, that something is right about the way you do things, it is the
disciple.
Yeah, what is it? His disciples would have to look more redeemed.
Yeah.
Right? So if you can somehow demonstrate that by abiding,
for example,
leading by example, right?
Yeah.
By abiding by your religion, people really do live better, live happier, live more fulfilled lives. I think
it's not just everyone's like molesting children.
yeah. Because I think all these arguments about what is the true religion based on quote unquote evidence based.
Right.
Bible historian or like what digging up which is true and like all these kind of arguments about which is the true religion. If they go on to theology or history or so on, they'll never really be convincing.
Yeah. And it's missing the point of what religion is as well.
Exactly, right?
It's like we have many historical like periods and facts and stories and whatever, but that's not what religion really is. It's just artifacts.
Which is also why in the first part of this book, Nietzsche always refers to the Christians as what is it? Detesters of the body or something like that. Like
despisers of the body.
Despisers of the body. The idea that we're going to heaven, we have this big ideal, so we're just limited on earth here. We just have to like pay for our sin of Adam and Eve and so on.
Yeah.
He's like, no. If you want to convince me of the goodness of your religion, lead by example. Yeah. And show me how your disciples are actually living better lives.
Get fucking yoked. Go to the gym.
Yep.
Eat good.
Eat good.
There was a good section, a good couple sentences here, which I think we could talk about. It's talking about truth and the value of teachings and the value of these religious ideas.
Yeah.
He says, they wrote letters of blood on the path they followed, and their folly taught us that truth is proved by blood. But blood is the worst witness of truth. Blood poisons and transforms the purest teaching to delusion and hatred of the heart. And if someone goes through fire for his teaching, what does that prove? Truly, it is more when one's teaching comes out of one's own burning. So I thought it was quite good. Learning through direct experience, right? Rather than seeing your truth as your teaching is something that you need to like test, but not in a way that could ever disprove it, if that makes sense. It's like faith, right? Like when we have, like, people have their faith tested, and it's like what they're really experiencing is like realizing that God doesn't exist, and then like going bloop, and then going back into the delusion of like, you know, it's like I think as well there are some parallels with like political ideology as well, because I think the way that politics is talked about today, of like, and it's probably made more so by like these really insulated spheres on the internet, but like we have these like left and right pipelines, and like this idea of like a pipeline or something, and people like I finally left the death cult of the left, or the death cult of the right, or whatever, and you know, this idea that's like just a bit of ideology that you try and cling to, and is tested, and just because just because you've had it tested and it survived doesn't make it any more true, right? And if anything, getting rid of it because you've been tested is more valuable, right? Yeah,
I think there is some. I'm not sure if this ties in exactly with what you just said, but I've always had an issue with debates on panels and stuff, where you basically on the side that is arguing for or against, you bring in someone with direct personal experience, which I think always means that person can never objectively approach the topic and is unfit for the debate.
What do you mean by direct experience?
Picture any topic. I don't know. What is abortion?
Okay.
Alright. So that you bring on someone who has had or had not an abortion and had a really traumatic experience with it personally.
Yeah.
And then these are the kind of people we bring on to the kind of panel shows and debates and so on, which I feel like is usually, it's always like someone who has had, unless it's like a professor, you know, but usually it's like someone who has like had direct personal experience and now they've become this influencer online and whatever. But
I don't know if that's really the case, but anyway.
I see it a lot. I see it a lot, and whenever I see it, I'm like, well, you know, I would like to address all these points by their merit, but it's so blatantly obvious that this person is completely, you know, like their personal experience is so heavily weighing on them that they're incapable to objectively approach the topic, and they're completely unfit for this debate.
But I don't think that's necessarily a disadvantage.
I think it is usually.
Well, because I mean, at the end of the day, people have direct experience with the things that are being talked about, right?
Yeah.
So like, if you want to have if you want to get an idea of like what like the horrors of, like, for example, not being able to get an abortion would be like, it would be a good way of understanding that is having someone who's got experience with it. And even in a debate environment, like, you know, I think...
Sure, but then you're approaching it as a third party looking at a case study.
Yeah, but how do you mean?
Like, you can learn something from it looking at a case study as a third party.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is the personal experience as a representative of the theoretical argument. I think that's the problem usually. Yeah,
but then I mean, you could also argue that like most people like come to their political opinions through personal experience, right?
I think that's a problem. I think that's a problem.
But I mean, I don't think you can escape it.
I think you can.
I don't think so. Like, I mean,
I think you can.
I mean, even when I think about your political opinions, like, not to put you on the hot seat, but like,
no, go ahead.
They're very clearly, like, there are very clear parallels between your personal experience.
Well, how would you? How would you derive my violently blatant anarcho-capitalism from my personal experience? As a German village boy, raised in a left-wing household.
Okay. We're gonna get into this.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. No, I don't want to. This is way too personal for a podcast.
Okay, go ahead.
This should be a Patreon episode.
Sure. Because, like, I feel like, you know, most of my opinions, and obviously some of them have. Okay, it's okay.
Like, I don't want to say.
Yeah.
I don't want to say that you haven't thought out your. Because I know you put a lot of thought into your opinions, but my main point is that like, in some cases it's very clear when someone's personal experience has influenced their political beliefs. In some cases it's maybe not as clear, but I think in almost all cases, like, you can't escape like a blind spot for the fact that it's a blind spot.
No, and I mean I certainly do have strong opinions that are formed by personal experience, but I would say I'm fairly capable of recognizing when that is the case.
Okay.
And noticing that I have a certain bias there. So, for example,
that's a different thing, though.
Like,
right?
with you know, I love economics and all this stuff, and you know, a lot of it was basically counter to what I've been taught at school or through my environment. It was like personal reading that got me interested.
Yeah. And
you know, I would say in that way it's pretty much unrelated to my personal experience, or even you know, we're in Japan, we're in Sapporo, we're studying on this program, and nothing of that necessarily was super shaped by my personal experience, I would say.
But I would say that's kind of the point, though, right? Like the fact that you railed against these things.
Yeah, but it was more like, I want to study abroad. Where can I afford it? It was like a bunch of logical inferences, you know. Whereas
I'm not talking about being in Sapporo specifically. But
yeah.
Like, if you go to school and you think, oh, this is all bullshit, you're gonna be like, why is this? Why do I think this is bullshit?
Right. Okay.
And then you find out why you think it's bullshit.
Fair enough.
Right?
Fair enough. But you know, you see other people who are like.
I
don't want to put anyone we know on the spot, but like, it's like, my dad had a music company in Japan, so I guess I'm interested in the music industry in Japan. It's like,
right,
really?
Okay.
That's out of all the things in the world, that just happened to be the thing that's your thing now. Like,
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah, but then, you know, it's like, how do people? I agree. I know what you're trying to say, like, for sure. It's like how critical people are when they adopt certain like beliefs or like, and to what extent they're shaped by like a direct, almost like passive consumption of their personal experience.
Yeah.
Rather than like a, you know, strongly thought out, like, it's a way that's like strongly thought out. And yeah, like, I don't think in like a serious debate, like, firstly, I mean, before we, like, going back to the beginning of what you were speaking about, like, I'm not against it, like, by, like, I'm not completely against it, obviously, but it doesn't seem like a great recipe for a debate to, like, have, like, super direct experience with something that's with a topic that's very controversial. If you're not able to contextualize it and like understand where your experience, like, or like, not what I don't know, reflect against your experience and understand that as like a highly charged experience, like, it doesn't affect your opinions, right? And that you can be wrong as well. But then I would also say that debates generally, no one participates in a debate to be like, oh yeah, you're right, I was wrong there. Like, that's not the function of debates, right? The debate is to convince the audience to change their mind. It's not to change the debater's mind. So
yeah, but I mean, okay, to give one last point, and before we leave this, so this is kind of on a tangent. So that, okay, just to recap, what we're talking about is how personal experience potentially poisons your objectiveness in approaching a topic. And so when I think, for example, of immigration in Germany,
Yeah.
And I think of, for example, anti-immigration people. Usually, the conversation goes something like, "Well, this foreigner stole my thing, or they did some, they were rude to me, or they littered on my porch, or whatever."
Yeah. Or I saw like a video on Facebook. Of someone flipping a car or some shit.
Whereas when I talk to pro-immigration people, the argument goes something like, "Oh, my friend Hussein, he's my best friend. He's really nice. I know this Turkish guy. He's so nice."
Sure.
So, and it's the same fucking problem.
Yeah.
What if we're really debating immigration on a like national scale? Why are we not looking at kind of changes in crime rate, changes in like kind of average wage, changes in entrepreneurship? These kind of macroeconomic measurements, this is it always goes into this like, oh well, I know this guy, and
but that's the problem with debate as well. I think, but I don't know. I've seen lots of debates about lots of different things, and I haven't really seen arguments like those standing up ever. Really, don't know what debates you're watching.
I guess this one was more about just like the way people form their opinions, not necessarily debates.
Right. Yeah. Got you. Cool.
Yeah, you don't put some guy on TV who's like, "Yeah, my friend who seems really nice."
Yeah, I mean, unless because if you have two people on like either side, some guys like, "I've got a friend, like my fucking Turkish buddy is like super nice," and then the other guy's like, "Some fucking Turkish guy stole my fucking lawnmower."
Yeah.
If you put the two guys in a room, you're not gonna get debate out of it.
Yeah, but that's basically our political discourse. It's just people.
I think it's
just people throwing their trivial personal experiences against each other for a lot of it. I think.
So where are you watching these debates?
No.
I don't know. I see a lot of good debate, relatively good debates on YouTube.
Fair enough.
But yeah, anyway, this is beside the point.
Okay, on the virtuous. Next chapter.
Yes. But just to close out
on the priests.
chapter on the priests, I think we also have our boy is saying he's never yet met a Superman. There has never yet been a Superman. And this is another kind of like strike against religion, right? It's like for all of religion's power and like for all religion's influence, it's actually not. It's never created someone who's really truly like fits this criteria of the Supermensch.
Right, and the idea is the disciple becoming so potent. Because Christians would say Jesus, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, of the virtuous.
Of the virtuous.
So this is a very big hit against Christianity and like popular morality, I guess.
I guess that as well. Yeah.
There's a couple things. So we have a couple things. We talk about like virtue as a means of receiving a reward. Virtue as a what is it? Being vengefully just, like righteously, like we talked about earlier, like leveraging virtue to hurt someone, and weakness as a virtue, or like non-participation in things as a virtue. There are lots of like
he lists ways in which people misuse virtue, I guess,
and then he gives us his idea of what virtue is. So to start, where should we start from? What have I got written down?
I like and others, something like that. Should be like a page in.
Okay. And there are others who are drawn downward. The devils draw them.
No, sorry.
And with others their vices grow lazy,
and
they call that virtue. And once their hatred and jealousy stretch themselves to rest, their, quote, justice becomes lively and rubs its sleepy eyes.
So he like analyzes the ways in which people abuse virtue for their own good. I like this category he mentions here, where it's just like, people who just get tired of they just get tired of their vices, whatever it be, like, I don't know, drugs, gambling, sex, all these things, and then you just got tired of it, so now I'm gonna be a good guy.
Right.
It's kind of funny,
That's an interesting idea.
Getting tired of your vices, and so now it's time for justice,
Well, it's also just the idea of feeling virtuous for something you haven't earned, right? Like it's like overcome your vice, but you haven't actually overcome anything. You've just become bored of it, right?
Yeah. Fair enough. Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it's like, I like quit drinking, but you don't actually drink that much in the first place, or like, or it wasn't really that much of a problem.
Yeah.
So
it's just grasping at straws to not quit drinking.
We say, there's another quote at the beginning. You want to be paid as well, you virtuous. Do you want reward for virtue and heaven for earth and eternity for your today? Which is like very, very clear, like attack at Christianity. And he says, and are you now angry with me because I teach that there is no reward giver nor paymaster? And truly, I do not even teach that virtue is its own reward. So, this is obviously, like, quite clearly why, like, Nietzsche was so controversial. This, the implications of having no God is that there's no one to give you your reward for abstaining your whole life, and
heaven. Right?
And there's nothing for you. And he also says, you love your virtue as the mother her child, but when was it heard of a mother wanting to be paid for her love?
Right.
Which is great. And then he seems like his solution is just the most virtuous thing is just to act, I guess. And do things 100%. I don't know. There's no real, like, being virtuous has nothing to do with, like, like expecting payment for doing things, or like you shouldn't use virtue to. It says they want to scratch out the eyes of their enemies with their virtue, and they raise themselves only in order to lower others. Yeah, that's not virtue. There are those who sit in the swamp and speak from the rushes. Virtue, that means to sit quietly on the swamp. We bite nobody and avoid him who wants to bite, and in everything we hold the opinion that is given us. These people think that this is virtue, but this is incorrect.
Also, can you read from here?
And others are proud of their handful of righteousness, and for its sake commit wanton outrage upon all things, so that the world is drowned in their unrighteousness. Alas, how the ill word virtue sounds in their mouths, and when they say I am just, it always sounds like I am revenged.
So this is in German, I am just means ich bin gerecht, spelled with an E. And I am revenged is ich bin gerecht with an A.
A with the umlaut thing.
So it sounds like the exact same.
That's
literally I am just and I am revenged. It's the same pronunciation. Yeah,
that's cool.
And it's this is also kind of
so edgy,
tying into the tarantulas, I think, later.
Right. Sure.
Where justice becomes just a means to.
And it's the whole this idea of justice, or like virtue being obscured, like, and it's really hard to tell like why people act.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
So, of the rabble. What is the rabble?
The rabble.
The unwashed masses. I guess, right?
Yeah, we're critiquing politicians for bowing down to the will of the people. Okay.
And just critiquing people generally, right? I
yeah.
guess.
Okay, so we have a dichotomy here of, on the one hand, if we think of democracy, we want politics, we want leaders in general. We want them to serve the community. On the other hand, so they should listen to the community and they should do what the community wants.
Yeah.
On the other hand, leaders establish themselves based on the fact that their superior knowledge, their superior authority, makes them fit to lead.
Yes.
So then, if they just do whatever the masses is currently in vogue, they're not real leaders. They're simply
it's just like a channel. For something.
They're simply grasping onto their power. It's like not to bring up this political shit again, but I think in
don't have to be embarrassed. It's okay.
No, I'm trying to remember. I think it was Canada, the Trudeau government. They pretty much, it seems like, based their whole COVID policy on public opinion poll.
Right.
Like whether to wear masks or not, and so on. But it's all masked in like the language of science, right? We are the authorities. We are the leaders. We know what's best for you. We know the science. You don't know the science.
Yeah.
But in the end, it's all like, okay, so how many people are willing to wear the mask? Like, do people want to wear the mask?
Okay.
Like, it's all based on this, like, bowing down to whatever the masses want, but passing it off as if your leadership, your authority is based in some kind of true fact.
Yeah, it is a paradox, because on the other hand, you have just, like, full-blown authoritarianism where
Exactly.
Where it's like, you wear the mask because we tell you.
Exactly, because we know better than you. That's also horrible.
Exactly, right.
Yeah, like,
even if it is correctly judged, right.
Right.
Yeah, that's like big problem in this chapter.
It's a paradox of leadership, and later we talk about, I think there's a sentence like it's harder to lead than to listen or something like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about that, being the difficulty of being the leader. Our boy Zarathustra, he hates the rabble. Really doesn't like them.
Rabble in arms.
He questions what does life have need of the rabble? Are poisoned wells necessary, and stinking fires and dirty dreams and maggots in the bread of life?
Ooh.
This is some good Nazi shit. Not much to comment on that, to be honest.
Yeah. Someone picked this up.
But he
yeah, it's not wrong though. Go on.
And so there is this, I don't know, we've already talked about that, democracy. What else did we have in this chapter?
I honestly didn't mark anything, but I remember it.
Yeah, I mean, this chapter does come across as quite kind of snobby in a way, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you're talking about the masses being stupid.
Yeah, but it's just beyond. But it's beyond stupid as well.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, not obviously he compares them to like maggots in the bread of life, which is pretty bad. But he also says, if they ate our food, they would think they were eating fire and burn their mouths. Like,
I think it's not necessary. I don't think he's critiquing the idea of lower class individuals, but more so the idea of a rabble group dynamic. So, for example, nowadays where people are kind of better off and more individualized, this wouldn't apply, I guess. But if you think of even like the kind of medieval like I don't know, you have some kind of not even nation, some kind of kingdom, and so everyone loves the king, and the king is great, and then some guy comes and kills the king and captures everyone else, and it's like, oh, the king is dead, long live the king. So
yeah,
it's like, okay, now we listen to this guy.
yeah.
Like, and
right,
and now we go kill other people on his behalf.
It's more,
and nothing changed except that now he's the guy in charge.
It's the idea that like, yeah, you would continue to be a camel where you have the opportunity to be more.
Yeah. And kind of, whenever I read this kind of rabble as maggots, I think of like, witch burnings and those kind of things.
Yeah.
How this kind of toxic group dynamic just,
for sure,
brings out the worst in people.
All right, I think we should have a little break now.
Yeah, I think so.
Got tarantulas
The tarantulas are going to take a lot out of me, so I need a break.
And we've covered, I think, 5 pages.
Oh God.
Nah, we've done 15 pages.
15 pages.
All right, catch you in a bit.
Boys, 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 book boys.
Book boys,
Book boys.
we're back.
We're back after the break. We got some food from the conbini.
Yeah,
We've got some disturbing videos on our mind.
yeah, we watched some stupid videos. We're gonna try and get back into it. So we left with talking about the rabble, talking about the priests. Now we're talking about tarantulas.
Yes, and this is my perhaps favorite chapter. And
This is basically all Phil's been going on about.
yes, and this is basically a direct criticism on socialism. Is it not?
Yeah,
And not one. So
I would say liberalism as well, actually.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
But yeah,
Yeah, I'll hear you out on that in a second. So, we've had critiques of socialism economically, mathematically, those kind of. No, this is a kind of moral critique, basically undermining the idea of compassion as well, which we've had mentioned earlier, but more on the idea of equality. So, who are the tarantulas, Nick? What do they do?
the tarantulas, they preach equality, or they preach the idea that humans are equal. That's what the tarantulas are.
And Zarathustra basically tells us they are hidden revenge seekers. There's so many quotes to read here.
There are loads, yeah.
God, which is this one? Revenge.
It's the will to equality, or practicing revenge.
Yeah, around there.
So we have some quotes. We shall practice revenge and outrage against all who are not as we are. Thus the tarantula hearts promise themselves. And will to equality, that itself shall henceforth be the name of virtue, and we shall raise outcry against everything that has power. You preachers of equality, thus from you the tyrant madness of impotence cries for equality. Thus your most secret tyrant appetite disguises itself in words of virtue.
Okay, so we got first equality as the highest virtue, under which is revenge hidden, and the idea of criticizing everything that has power.
Yeah.
And I really like that he used the word power, because now we can apply this not only to, whatever bourgeoisie, proletariat, this is not necessarily an economic thing.
Yeah.
So this goes in a sense beyond socialism, but, the idea of having direct power over someone, not having, status necessarily, because those are different things.
Sure.
So basically, yeah, those who are powerful, shall be, we have to invert the hierarchy kind of idea. And
well, I wouldn't say inverting a hierarchy as such, right? That's not the. But
equalize.
Equalizing rather than inverting, which is actually kind of different when you think about it. Like
conceptually,
it's not like
yeah.
Destroying the bourgeoisie and replacing it with some proletariat state, right? That would be inversion.
Yeah. And at the end here he mentions tyranny. So basically, the will to equality is the will to tyranny. Because in practice, there is no perfect equality, because, and he says this in the next page, humans are not equal. That's simply a fact. People come with different talents, with different abilities, with different height, different strength, different IQs, different competences, different interests.
Different experiences.
Humans are not equal. That's simply the case. So therefore, preaching equality is either, kind of a impossible mental acrobatics. Like you could imagine producing a extremely totalitarian state bureaucracy that tries to equalize all differences between two people, which would be quite elaborate. And obviously, you can never perfectly get there, but you could approach it. But rather than something that's kind of ridiculous like that, really what this means is simply revenge. And it's there is no equalizing. There's only inverting the hierarchy. There is no equalizing in reality. Because you can't equalize people who aren't equal.
Right. Okay. How do you mean?
Well, he says, what does it say? He says,
so I do not want to be
Thus speaks,
confused
yeah.
with these preachers of equality, nor taken for one of them. For justice speaks thus to me: men are not equal.
Right. So we have this conflation between equality and justice on the tarantula side, right? Equality is justice. But, gaining from the fact that people aren't equal, how can equality be justice when people aren't equal? Unequality must be just. To each their own. Right.
See, I kind of interpret this as more like, I don't know how to describe it, like, people being equal is not, like the idea of human beings are equal in a, like, natural rights sense, I guess. Like, all people are equal under God kind of thing. Like the...
I think
that's part of the American Constitution.
Yeah,
right?
but I think that's clearly not what we're talking about here.
Okay.
It's like the idea of whatever, equal, everyone gets the same share, everyone gets, equal income or whatever, or equality of wealth distribution. It's like, no matter how hard you try or no matter how much you contribute, everyone gets the same. How is that? Yeah. How is that just, right? That's clearly not just, right? Because there is inequality in nature, there must be inequality among humans.
I don't know. I mean, I know your position on this, like, very clearly.
I'm just picking up also what I think is in the text here.
Yeah, no, of course. But I think that's also why you like it so much, right?
Well, it's also, where I got this position from.
Right.
Partially.
I think, I don't know. I feel like there's something missing from this, though. Like, maybe not equality per se, but like, like I think it's Nietzsche's position here is like super intense. He's like, men are not equal, and they should not become so either. He says they should press onto the future across 1,000 bridges and gangways, and there should be more and more war and inequality among them. Thus my great love makes me speak. They should become devisers of emblems and phantoms in their enmity, and with their emblems and phantoms they should fight together with the supreme fight. So like he's basically saying like the Übermensch should become, or the people striving for the Übermensch should become so there should be such a inequality between the lowest human and the highest person striving towards this Übermensch, for the sake of overcoming yourself. What was my point? Fuck.
To me, what you just read, the quote you just read, just sounds like he is putting the idea of competition into poetry.
But the question is like more war and inequality, like
whatever turns out productive, useful, shall rise, whatever is not shall fall.
I feel I guess my problem with it is it's like I think about like I don't know people who are not productive, like I don't know. I feel like the implications of like this line of thought are quite like
people who are not productive shall become productive and compete in becoming productive.
Or the people who aren't productive will just be like essentially deemed as like in like having no value.
That's not really in here, but in a sense, yeah, I mean the conception of value a lot in this book is he who creates, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't create, well, what's your
so
value?
like say if you're like a disabled guy or something, and I don't know, you could be like very physically disabled to the point where you can't perform like normal tasks that you're required to do in a job. Like up until now, this book seems to tell me that like helping out this person would be like either some self-gratifying like virtue signal, and that also this person, at least within within like what they can offer in like a normal conventional job that they wouldn't be able to do, has like no value, right?
I think that's a bit interpreted too far. I don't think that's written anywhere.
Okay.
The no value part. I don't think we're talking about value here anywhere necessarily, but
I guess so. But then, you know, also we have this problem of like, if we allow inequality to spread to such a high degree, how do we prevent tyranny from occurring in that way? Like from people who have lots of power and who aren't like, I mean, there's nothing about the Übermensch that says we shouldn't be tyrants as well, right?
I think there's other parts in the book to look for that answer. I don't think in this chapter we're trying to conceptualize the whole way of the state. It's more like criticizing the idea of the tarantula.
Sure.
We're only critiquing the tarantula. We're not really trying to explain anything else.
Okay.
For the cripples, we have another chapter in this part, right?
Yeah, that's true.
But
he just doesn't he talk about everyone's cripples basically?
Yeah, it's quite funny as well. But there was one more part here around 1 page in ish.
Thus.
Yes.
Thus, yeah, I've written next to this fair point. Thus, however, I advise you, my friends, mistrust all in whom the urge to punish is strong. They are people of a bad breed and a bad descent. The executioner and the bloodhound peer from out their faces. Mistrust all those who talk much about their justice. Truly, it is not only honey that their souls lack. And when they call themselves the good and just, do not forget that nothing is lacking to make them into Pharisees except power. Pharisees meaning like hypocrite, I guess, in this.
Isn't this a Bible allusion?
Yeah, it's like a like Jewish sect or something.
Yeah, I think it was the Jewish sect that was kind of more powerful and kind of depicted as oppressive in the Old Testament.
In the dictionary, the word I read was used to describe a hypocrite as well.
Oh, really?
Which might be the meaning here too.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, I mean, totally. Like,
so in this we have, mistrust those who want to punish, who want to exercise power in a punishing way over others. And this is the thing with the, people who have what you said, but wouldn't that mean that people have no value and that we should just, whatever the implication of that is, get rid of them and so on. Well, here it says, basically, no one has the right to deem themselves as judge or executioner or being just and punish others. No one should punish. But we're simply saying there's inequality. Some things are better than others. Therefore, aim for whatever is highest, aim for whatever is best, and have no compassion no attachment to what is lowest. Just throw that away. It's not saying punish those who aren't able to achieve as high as you can.
Of course. Yeah.
That's what I would say, I guess.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, for sure. Yeah. What else do we have?
This might be it for now for the tarantulas, but I think we might come back to it.
Yeah, it's quite an influential chapter.
Yeah, what do you think is the why tarantulas? What is the image here?
I mean, it's something that like traps. I don't know. Like tarantulas are like horrifying. Like they're typically like kind of horrifying things. And this tarantula lives in a cave. It's like, you know,
revenge. Is something about tarantulas particularly revengeful?
No, I don't think so.
Alright, tarantulas. You don't love the poor, you just hate the rich.
If you have any ideas about what the tarantulas mean, we have an email address now. We'll say it again at the end of the episode, but it's bookboyspod@gmail.com. So send us your thoughts.
Please do.
So next we have a chapter called Of the Famous Philosophers, which is quite an interesting one. It's all about like basic like intellectuals and public intellectuals, academics, and how the people in society who produce ideas are they're kind of towed by the people, right?
This is basically a concentrated little extract of Thomas Sowell's book Intellectuals and Society.
Right. So what do we have here? The genuine men, the free spirits, have always dwelt in the desert, as the lords of the desert, but in the towns dwell the well-fed famous philosophers, the draft animals, for they always, as asses, pull the people's cart. So, like, I guess obviously the idea is like, within society there's a range of acceptable discourses, and there are also, similarly to what we were talking about earlier with democracy, this issue of the only way of, or rather, there is a system built in to give people the incentive to produce work that will help, or that will provide people what they want. And that's not necessarily in the interest of the people who want that thing.
Right.
And I mean, we could talk about like, I don't know, like race science or some shit, like phrenology and
this
whatever.
This is basically it's like media bias as well. You know, you tune into whatever program tells you what you want to hear.
Yeah.
I mean, just the first sentence of the chapter is like,
yeah, you have served the people and the people's superstitions, all you famous philosophers. You have not served truth, and it's precisely for that reason that they have paid you reverence. Yeah. That sums it up.
That's the chapter. Yeah, right.
Next.
Okay, now we have the three songs: the night song, the dance song, and the grave song.
Yeah.
I haven't written any notes to any of these, and I didn't understand any of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird tangent. The night song, he's just kind of like, I don't know, talking about how much he likes giving, I guess, or like stuff, and how he has so much wisdom. It's like being, I don't know, being lonely, not having anything to take from people, is what he describes.
Yeah, he talks about that as well.
The dance song, this is kind of like it's not a discourse really, but he comes across these two women who are like dancing, and he unleashes the highest level riz, the ultimate. If you ever want to like hit on someone, use this. If you're in like a club and there's like someone cute that you want to like say hello to, approach them and speak these words. Do not cease your dance, sweet girls. No spoil sport has come to you with an evil eye. No enemy of girls. I am God's advocate with the devil. He, however, is the spirit of gravity. How could I be enemy to divine dancing, you nimble creatures? Or to girls' feet with fair ankles? Works every time.
Works every time. You try this one out?
I think the girls are having like an argument with each other.
Well, the girl, one of them,
they like both love each other or something, and they both make each other jealous.
Isn't it one of them symbolizes life and one of them symbolizes wisdom?
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's wisdom in life and vice versa. And he's taken apart these two concepts, but I can't really gain any specific like, yes, this is the thing we learned from this chapter, you know.
Yeah, there's no nut, boy. I looked it up. I was reading about these chapters and I couldn't really find anything either. I mean, the same with the funeral song. There's no clear like. The final song, the funeral song. There's no real clear like sermon. No real like teaching, I feel. But then we move on to of self-overcoming, which is where the will to power is most kind of explicitly introduced. So this is all about like being commanding and obeying, and where this really important quote comes up. But wherever I found living creatures, there too I heard the language of obedience. All living creatures are obeying creatures. And this is the second thing. He who cannot obey himself will be commanded. That is the nature of living creatures. But this is the third thing. We can actually maybe go grab this later, but you know this thing that like there's like some dumb like inspirational quote like, live your dreams or you'll end up helping someone build theirs.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. And I think it's one thing that honestly I think a lot of people kind of find this difficult to stomach sometimes.
This being what?
The idea that like you have to kind of have some degree of control over yourself, or like some degree of self-discipline.
Right.
And
it's hard.
Yeah, and that it's hard, yeah. But that it's also actually kind of really useful.
Yeah. And
in some cases actually necessary.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you think about two separate ideas, like think, if only you had the power to control another human being and they would do anything that you command them to, and, you know, they would obey any of your demands. Imagine how much you could achieve building with that guy. Oh wait, it's you.
Yeah.
You have that.
Yeah.
Everyone has that. You know, it's just the only thing that's keeping you from it is your inability to lead yourself. You know.
Yeah, for sure. And I like the way this presented. It's like, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like the whole like self-discipline thing is like super like fetishized to the extent where people don't actually know how to have fun anymore.
Right.
And they're just fucking miserable, and like all the things that they're driving towards are completely meaningless, and they don't even admit that to themselves. But here, I don't know, it's more kind of maybe a bit more fundamental. And then we have another kind of, I think this is like very fitting with Nietzsche. Commanding is more difficult than obeying, and not only because the commander bears the burden of all who obey, and that this burden can easily crush him. In all commanding there appeared to me to be an experiment and a risk, and the living creature always risks himself when he commands. Yes, even when he commands himself, then also must he make amends for his commanding. He must become judge and avenger and victim of his own law. Yeah. I mean...
Stands for itself.
Nietzsche's very clearly pretty, like... I don't know. You see his, like, right-wing appeal. This is a thing, like, I don't know. I find it, like, there's not... When you read stuff like this, like... Can you really say there's much of a left-wing interpretation of this book?
No, but it's also like obviously true. I mean, does anyone think commanding is easier than obeying?
I don't know. I mean,
it's like, why does the manager earn more than the non-manager? Like, yeah.
I mean, wages isn't really a justification, but sure.
It kind of is a direct translation into the economy, I would say. Difficulty of tasks.
In perfect conditions, maybe. I don't know. So, what else do we have from here?
Pretty much anyone can follow orders, but can they successfully lead? Not anyone. Should anyone even lead at all? Should anyone lead anyone except themselves? That's a question.
Yeah, for sure.
Probably not, I would say, but... Or not through direct power, but maybe, leadership doesn't have to be power. Leadership can be inspired by awe. I mean, Zarathustra and his disciples, they're not in a power relationship necessarily.
Yeah, and I think that's... Yeah, this... And yeah, does it have to be... does your commanding have to be... Can it be voluntary? Or, like, can your obeying be voluntary?
Right.
Like, to what extent are you being an authority over someone else when you command them?
It's like when you... I mean, school is different because now we have the state involved all of a sudden, but if you just imagine you going to, like, a private classroom to learn, I don't know, take guitar lessons, or dance lessons, or whatever, jiu-jitsu or whatever, you voluntarily submit yourself to a leader to obey their demands because you think there's something to be gained from that, right?
But you'll cancel that if it's not doing what you want it to do. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and even like the idea of being able to like vote in the person who manages you.
And anyone can go into class and obey, but not everyone can lead the class.
Sure.
And then we have the last kind of paragraph here in this chapter as well. Speak something.
Yeah. Let us speak of this, you wisest men, even if it is a bad thing. To be silent is worse. All suppressed truths become poisonous. And let everything that can break upon our truths break. There is many a house still to build. Yeah, I like the way this is worded. Let everything that can break upon our truths break. It's a call to action.
Reminds me of a contemporary rap lyrics by controversial rap icon Tom McDonald. Something like
great.
What is it? It's basically the same thing, but talking about free speech and what is it? Shit.
We can just
basically any viewpoint that can be broken or that can be dismantled by free speech or by any truth, it's not really a viewpoint worth protecting in the first place.
Yeah.
The idea of everything that can break by our truth shall break.
Well, because the question is why keep something if we have truth as like our highest value, then we should break everything against everything that will break against them. So next we have Of the Sublime Men, which I have literally no notes of.
I have I put a little bracket on the last section here, but this was 2 years ago, so let's see.
It's about like
yeah. So go on.
No virtue being kind just because you can't be mean.
Yes. Can you read this? All evil something?
Any evil?
Yeah.
I believe you capable of any evil, therefore I desire of you the good. In truth, I have often laughed at the weaklings who think themselves good because their claws are blunt. You should aspire to the virtue of the pillar. The higher it rises, the fairer and more graceful it grows, but inwardly harder and able to bear more weight.
I like this with the paws. What is it?
Yeah, the claws are blunt.
The claws are... Yeah, so... we have here the idea that just because you're weak, just because you're incapable of doing evil, doesn't mean that you're virtuous. You're simply weak,
sure.
And that's bad. And there's to go back to tarantulas and kind of proletariat and all this kind of stuff. Just because the powerless haven't abused their power, doesn't mean they're virtuous. It just means they don't have power.
Yeah, for sure.
And probably that being weak is not necessary. Is usually not something that makes you a better or stronger person. Doesn't mean that you're a bad person, but there's no reason to assume that just because you're weak, you are somehow, fit to lead or whatever.
Yeah, and the whole I guess the idea with Nietzsche's conception of like the Superman and like this idea we talked about of inequality and also leaders is that the people that will assume those positions will understand how will understand what virtue means.
Yeah.
And we'll be able to say, for example, like, earlier me and Phil talked about the that like quote from earlier in the book where it's like, I'm not upset that you did this to me, I'm upset that you did it to yourself. Like most people can't actually say that and mean it. And I think to say that and mean it is maybe a sign of really being like the Übermensch, right?
Fair enough. Yeah.
And yeah, I think it is interesting, like to think about, how capable are you of doing evil, and like really, sometimes like
everyone thinks of themselves as the good guy, right?
Yeah, but also some, I noticed this with some people, like, especially if you're not really like super close friends with someone, but you maybe like friends you've known them for a long time, or you get to know them through like a period of growth in their life. Like I think quite a few of the people experience this a little bit, maybe with some people that we've been in university with. You meet them at a point where maybe they don't really have much confidence in themselves. And as you see that confidence develop, you also observe like some instances where they use that newfound confidence to do things that are unkind. And it's not necessarily because they are... I wouldn't say like intrinsically evil. I think it's more a case of doing bad things rather than that. But it's almost kind of like people, when they gain confidence, they have to grow into it, and they have to find ways of like finding acceptable boundaries for their behavior and acceptable expressions of their newfound confidence that don't shit on other people. Like if someone, for example, like, I don't know, maybe they don't think they're like particularly attractive, and they have like this big glow up phase where they like make themselves look fucking beautiful, and then they're just like mean to everyone around them because they're more beautiful than them.
It's the classic bullied kid becomes the bully story.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think you mentioned kind of, and we've talked about this a lot, like Nietzsche often being, or at least in the past, I don't think nowadays anyone necessarily cares, but being misappropriated by right extremists. And often even a lot of Marxists also quote Nietzsche. So it's a book for everyone and no one. But I think there is definitely more of a tendency to be used by right wingers. Like Nietzsche is usually associated with a kind of right wing connotation.
Yeah.
And whether or not that's true, I think the kind of the center point which the true point which does kind of set Nietzsche apart, at least from the modern left in a way that it doesn't set him apart from the modern right, is all throughout this book we have a very strong affirmation in different forms, in forms of confidence, in forms of love, in forms of this or that. It's always affirmed strength is good, weakness is bad.
Yeah.
Just very,
for sure.
very generally. Whereas, and obviously we have that idea driven to the extreme with kind of racial ideology and so in the past, right? Where, we are the strongest race or so on. Obviously,
right.
That assumption in itself is false. So
yeah.
Whereas with a lot of left-wing ideology,
and obviously
I feel
not
like
contained in this book either.
Yeah. Where I think with a lot of left-wing ideology, it's simply strength is bad and weakness is good. So it's it's kind of a inversion of this idea itself, which is why I think there's a lot of tension between Nietzsche and left-wingers, or a perhaps more of an association to right-wing politics.
Yeah, maybe in some cases I see what you're saying for sure.
The idea of compassion, right? Embracing weakness in a sense.
I think as well. I don't know to what I don't really know if I well, yeah. I mean, there's a lot that I actually on the fence, or kind of not really know where I stand with this book, to be honest. But I can see how this would apply, for example, with like getting guys to like talk about their feelings more, for example.
Yeah.
Which I genuinely think is like almost always a positive thing, but within the scope of like Nietzsche, it's like to feel shame for something, you have to feel like it's disempowering you or something, right? Or you have to feel like, and so to as like a when we have this like stereotypical image of a man, or like this idea of like masculinity, which is like often not about expressing emotions, then within that scope it's obvious like to do that is completely contrary to what your existence is about. And yeah, so I guess in that case, like I get what our boy is saying.
Yeah. I mean, with the feelings thing, it's a modern topic, but obviously there's in a sense talking about the feelings is simply honesty, right? That's one way to look at it. Which is being preached in this book a lot.
And also as well, I mean, a lot of it's funny because like a kind of contemporary framing of like getting guys to talk about their feelings is actually that it takes strength to overcome the feeling of shame, if that makes sense, and it takes strength to it takes strength to talk about your feelings for some people,
right?
So it's funny because I would say that I'm probably pretty good at talking about my feelings, but I could also be criticized for being feeling falsely virtuous, because it's quite straightforward for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm a guy that can talk about my feelings, so I'm better than you.
Yeah. So therefore, I'm the alpha. Yeah. Look at me talk about my feelings. You're weak. That's funny. No, but that idea. I think where a lot of people have issues, probably justifiably, is when it comes to kind of education and children and how incentive structures are set up. Because if you ask a young boy, always like, not do you think this was just, when something happened, they had a fight or something, So, what happened? What did you do? What did they do? Do you think you acted well? Instead of asking those questions, we just ask, well, how does it make you feel?
Right.
And if that's your primary question, then you're basically, minimizing objective reality, and the only thing that matters is how you feel. And we get this kind of hypersensitive culture of, I'm offended and blah blah blah, right. And you're erasing trans lives and all these kind of keywords where it's all about how people feel. It's not about what actually is the case.
Okay.
And I think that breeds the kind of generation that we see. And it's also, directly kind of with children, they want attention. So if you ask them, how does it make you feel? And they say something that evokes a compassionate response, then you train them into giving those kind of responses or thinking that kind of way.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
The thing that children want the most is love and attention and compassion from their parents. And if you hand that out constantly for complaining about like minute shit, then you're gonna raise a toxic child. I think.
Yeah, that's fair.
Fair enough. Okay, we have some real life things intervening. Should we?
No, I think we can go for a little bit.
We can go for a little bit.
Maybe we'll specify some.
We can just make another break and do another recording.
No, it's okay. We can carry on.
Okay.
Just go for another 15-20 minutes or something.
Right.
The immaculate perception, we jumped a little bit. So
we are going to talk about the
land of education. Oh, we can, I guess.
What is this one about?
I
like the imagery in this one.
Okay.
So Zarathustra comes to the land of education, and he sees. So this is him returning to the people, right? And he sees people who are kind of colorful. They're like all these. How is it described here?
Painted with 50 blotches on face and limbs. Yeah. Let's rapid fire through these.
Yeah.
These last chapters. I say last chapters. We've done like 8 chapters of like 22.
I know. Yeah, we're not going to finish the whole thing now. But.
Okay.
So he sees all these kind of, differently colored people, not in the sense of of race or anything, but like paint.
Yeah.
They're they have like 50 different shades of paint all over them, and he laughs at them. And can you read? Oh God.
From the S.
It's like one page in, basically, on yours.
What's some words?
Yes.
Yes, you are laughable to me.
Walking, wandering.
You are walking refutations of belief itself, and the fracture of all thought. Unworthy of belief, that is what I call you, you realists. All ages babble in confusion in your spirits, and the dreaming and babbling of all ages was more real than is your waking. You are unfruitful, therefore you lack belief. But he who had to create always had his prophetic dreams and star auguries, and he believed in belief.
All right. So this idea of being all colorful, having all colors, the temporary, the realists, the current people, basically criticizing people for being inclusive of all ideas, inclusive of all the culture that was before now. We're incorporating all beliefs, all religions. We're going to be this blob. We're going to be this multi-culti amalgam of all that has ever been in the past, all that's ever been said. Nothing is wrong. Everything is equal, and we're gonna be all of that. And he's laughing at them like, yeah, you're a fucking mess is what you are. You're incoherent. There are some things that are good and some things that are bad, some things that are right and some things that are wrong, and you're trying to be all of it at once in one incoherent blob.
Right, I see.
And he's kind of like,
you lack belief.
Yeah.
It's a lack of like distinction between good and bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. this is the man that gave me a Soviet Union hammer and sickle pin badge to take home last podcast. That was the bonus Christmas present.
How is this related?
Well, like wearing a badge of a fucking Soviet Union.
Oh right, yeah, I'm all colorful. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's a meme. We're just poking fun. But yeah, it's, I guess, yeah, this kind of naivete of, yeah, no one has to be wrong. We can all get along. It's yeah,
Or,
sure, we can all get along, but it doesn't mean everything is right and everything is equal. And you know,
Yeah.
maybe the I knew aren't worth studying. There, I said it.
Bro.
Maybe we don't have to dig up. And Slavoj Žižek is really big on this.
Yeah.
Slavoj Žižek loves this talking point. He's all like Eurocentrist. Fuck all these native cultures, you know. He's like all these like modern white people nowadays being like, oh, we have to. All these deep, rich, ancient cultures, you know, they were with the animals and like, no, it's fucking like people in a hut who don't know how to write. That's what you're looking at. It's like, I'm sorry.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's a matter of perspective, surely. Like, there are like, I don't know. We don't have time to really get this deep into it. We should go on to of immaculate perception. So, this is about like people who don't want to create. They it's almost like people that just kind of like passively consume things, or just sort of, or needlessly reflect without actually doing anything. We have this great quote. What is this? So these are quotes from the people. For me, the highest thing would be to gaze at life without desire, and not, as a dog does, with his tongue hanging out. Thus speaks your mendacious spirit to itself. To be happy in gazing with benumbed will, without the grasping and greed of egotism, cold and ashen in body with intoxicated moon eyes. For me, the dearest thing would be to love the earth as the moon loves it, and to touch its beauty with the eyes alone. Thus the seduced one seduces himself. And let this be called by me immaculate perception of all things, that I desire nothing of things, except that I may lie down before them like a mirror with 100 eyes. This is like very, very, very clear reference to Buddhism, and like we know, like Nietzsche took a lot of influence, I think, from Buddhism when we're talking about like
the colorful cow. What was it?
Yeah, and the eternal recurrence.
Eternal recurrence. Yeah.
Even the idea of the Superman as some kind of like enlightened being.
Yeah, super Saiyan one.
This reminded me of, so the idea of not wanting to create in the sense of like, use your will.
Yeah.
And make something new reminded me of a great science fiction story by E.M. Forster. It's like really, really, I think it's like 1900 or something, called The Machine Stops. And it's a really good story. I would definitely recommend reading it. It's about a world where like the people basically live under the surface of the world, and it's actually like a precursor to the internet. Basically, it sort of predicted the internet. People live in these like enclosed bubbles, and they very rarely have physical contact with each other, and they live every day with their needs completely met by this big machine which controls the earth. And there are some really, really beautiful things put across in this that have really clear implications for the kind of world they're living in. And one of them is the world completely abandoned the space exploration, and they decided like, we don't need to do this anymore. The surface of the earth is completely uninhabitable. So, by deciding that we're never going to try and explore space, it's kind of this, I don't know, space is, as like a cultural idea, it's like this potentiality, this like freedom or like unknown, and like things that are left unexplored and things that we could never even possibly imagine.
Yeah. And
the idea of like turning your back on that is quite significant. On top of that, everyone in this world is like an academic. Everyone in this world studies, but what they study are just like in the incredible minutiae of like it will be like one's farming cooperative in like this small area of rural England before the world collapsed and turned into this like underground internet thing.
Yeah.
And there's this, I don't know, sense that everyone is just navel gazing and they're not actually producing anything new. It's just like, oh, I shared my research with this guy and he shared his research with me. So now our research is better. But it's that no one's actually like forming new ideas. No one's actually exploring things.
Oh, we're still talking about. Oh, I thought you were talking about. I thought you were talking about the current state of the humanities and social sciences. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about anthropology. Is what I thought you were talking about.
No. So
I spent my entire life.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Why are you so insufferable?
You know,
today?
there's all different kinds of Ainu, and some of them put their grains this way in the ground, but actually, I don't know. Yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
No,
it's not okay. But
I get your point, but it also seems like just an accurate description
I'm less upset at what you're doing to me, and I'm more upset at what you're doing to yourself.
I'm depriving myself of the Ainu knowledge I could have.
So Zarathustra describes himself, elevating him, going above all that, above all the noise. Next we have the scholars. This is actually kind of a similar thing, like talking about scholars as if they're sort of, you know, as if like studying stuff is just sort of this like fancy, how do we say, like this nice hobby that you would have, like
right.
Knowledge is just something that you collect and not something that actually has real significance. It reminds me of like, you know, one problem I have with history as like a subject is the like ownership of all these materials. Maybe not ownership itself, but like the structure of like history is so if you have lots of things, lots of materials, your research is better, and you will never give this shit to anyone else.
Yeah.
And like then at that point it's just like, why, you know, what are your real interests here? Like you're interested in preserving your academic career and your credentials rather than actually like coming to the core of what is your history. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're not we're not talking about the current humanities and social sciences. That people just care about their academic careers, not about actual truth.
I'm talking about.
It's almost like we make disciplines that make it their mission to disprove the idea of truth, just so they can excuse themselves not aiming for the truth.
All right, we're not doing part 3 of Zarathustra. No, I can't fucking deal with this shit anymore.
But fair point. The poets.
Yeah.
Why do the poets lie? Why do they lie? Tell me.
They say that they're deeper than they are. Don't do it.
I don't know.
Yeah, they are not clean enough for me either. They all disturb their waters so that they may seem deep. And in that way they would like to show themselves reconcilers, but to me they remain mediators and meddlers, and mediocre and unclean men. I think, he also says, indeed, I cast my net into their sea and hope to catch fine fish, but I always drew out an old god's head. I think this is kind of cool. Like, one thing that to me marks like a really interesting thinker is someone who like has a very good awareness of the things that came before them and has a very clear understanding of what they do that is different or new. And it's not just with art, with like people like philosophy as well. It's like very easy to seem like you're very good at doing something, but you're just channeling all these ideas that have come before you,
Yeah.
and you're not actually creating anything new.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, how likely is it that you have an original thought?
Exactly, yeah.
Probably not.
I mean,
ever in your life.
Yeah, and ironically, and he does actually criticize himself here. Well, Zarathustra criticizes himself, but also Nietzsche is criticizing himself here. Because, Zarathustra is not a name he came up with, and a lot of the ideas in this book aren't original ideas of his own. And obviously this is the fucking most pretentiously written book I've ever read. But it is actually, I think, it does punch its weight.
There is a good amount of original stuff that I've not seen anywhere else.
Yeah.
And Zarathustra is kind of a poet, right, as well. So
he is, yeah.
He's also one of the liars, and he talks about how sometimes, the poets don't know the truth, so they just make shit up along the way.
Yeah. Next we have Of Great Events.
Should we do that and then maybe just take a break there and we can just cut the recording and I'll call you something in the next couple of days.
Okay, sure. Let's do that.
Of Great Events.
So, Of Great Events. This is.
This with the fucking fire dog. This was so mess. I don't know what the fuck happened here, to be honest.
I think.
So, Zarathustra goes to an island with a big volcano, which is close to the
Blissful Islands.
Yeah, close to the Blissful Islands.
Oh yeah, sorry.
And so a ship crew, they go to this island with the volcano to hunt some rabbits, and they see Zarathustra flying through the air saying, "It's about time!" And then he flies to the volcano, and they're like, "I guess he went to hell." But then later Zarathustra appears among the ship people, and he's like, "Well, let me tell you what I fucking experienced, guys." And he talks about in the volcano he meets the what is it translated as, the fire dog?
The fire dog.
The fire dog. What is the fire dog? Kind of devil?
I don't know.
Right? So we are introduced to him by saying, on the earth, the earth crust has many illnesses. Some of them are called humans, some of them are called fire dogs. So I'd be like,
gee, thanks, bud.
And I'm like, oh god, how many of those mushrooms?
It's fucking lead in his water. Men have told many lies and been told many lies about him. Now I know all about the fire dog and also about all the revolutionary and subversive devils, which not only old women fear.
So he tells the dog about the church and the state. So he says, "Church," answered I. Where is that?
The church, I answered. The church is kind of state, and indeed the most mendacious kind. But keep quiet, you hypocrite dog. You surely know your own kind best. Like you, the state is a hypocrite dog. Like you, it likes to speak with smoke and bellowing, to make believe, like you, that it speaks out of the belly of things. For the state wants to be absolutely the most important beast on earth, and it is believed to be so too.
So I think what this chapter is really talking about is the state. I think the dog is the state, and he does a little lyrical trick here, a little poet trick, where he introduces us to this nonsensical concept of the fire dog, which doesn't exist, right? There's only humans. There's no fire dogs on the earth. There's no fucking fire dogs.
No.
There's only humans. So he's like, and there's humans and fire dogs. And then as the story goes, he like subverts this idea of the state. He talks about the church and then the state, and then he's like, yeah, the state is just like you, fire dog, and then he talks about the state.
Right.
So he's kind of like, and then he also talks about the state wants to be the most important animal, and then the fire dog is envious, and people even believe it. And it's all these ideas, and it's true if you think about it. Like, we have all these things, USA and Russia, and Like, oh, my passport. I gotta get my passport. If I don't
Yeah.
have my ID, I'm no one. I'm not legal.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
also, well, you're still a human on the earth. There's only other humans on earth. There is no fire dogs. There is no states technically. It's all we all made this shit up.
Yeah.
If you don't have a passport, it doesn't really mean anything necessarily for your actual existence. But yeah, and the fire dog gets angry, like, what? There's something more important than me? It's just like this, and it's how you get into state conflicts.
Right, sure.
And I think, yeah, it's, Nietzsche himself was stateless.
Yeah.
As we know, and
He lost his passport.
Yeah. So I think this is kind of maybe I'm misinterpreting this, yeah, but this seems kind of like a little lyrical trick where he introduces this nonsensical concept and then subverts it by I was talking about the state the whole time.
Yeah. So there's just people in the state.
Yeah,
that's what there is.
So there's people in the state, but the punchline really being, well, actually there's only people.
Yeah. Because the fire dog doesn't exist.
The fire dog doesn't exist, and yeah, it's like he wants to be the most important animal, even if this is kind of nonsensical.
Yeah, cool. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I guess if you look at it with that interpretation, you can I should maybe reread this and see if I get some more out of it. But that's all I have to say for now.
Yeah. All right. We'll call it a day for now. We'll continue this probably over Zoom or something.
Yeah, it'll just be a straight cut in here.
Yeah. We'll cut through. So
see you in a second.
See you in a sec.
Boys.
Book boys.
Book boys.
Bill's got his
next day.
His white drink.
Got my
We're joining you over Zoom.
What does that supposed to mean? The 31st. It's the last day of the year.
Yep.
And we're ending it with a bang.
We are. We've got 4
By which I mean I'm going to put a shotgun in my mouth. Okay. We had 4 chapters left. Or 4 sections, I guess.
Yeah.
The Prophet.
The Prophet. Yeah, so Zarathustra meets a prophet. He meets a guy.
Does he or does he dream this? I don't.
Oh, he is a
he hears right. He
a prophet.
Yeah.
And this guy says a bunch of stuff. All our work has been in vain. Our wine has become poison. An evil eye has scorched our fields and our hearts. We have all become dry. And if fire fell upon us, we should shatter like ashes. Yes, we have made weary fire itself. It's just a load of he's just been a big downer, really.
Yeah.
It's not bringing very good vibes to the party. And, in a similar way, as we talked about yesterday, not creating anything new in the world, and being almost stuck in a rut, cultural rut, where you just can't do it. You can't make anything.
And I guess for Zarathustra, the implication here is that you can all your enlightenment and whatever, but you're not going to inspire change in the world if the people and the rabble that you so despise is not going to follow you, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure. And this is maybe a little bit this is what Zarathustra signed up for when he decided not to engage with the rabble, right?
Right.
And maybe it's his fault. I don't know.
What's this? So I think this is the Prophet as well. He speaks about a wind blowing through the doors of a kind of castle and blowing through the rooms with graves.
Where is
that indeed?
There is stuff about glass coffins.
Yes. around
Yeah.
there.
I found it, yeah. When the wings of this door were opened, the sound ran through the long corridors like an evil croaking. This bird cried out ill-temperedly. It did not want to be awakened. But it was even more fearful and heart-tightening when again it became silent and still around, and I sat alone in that malignant silence. So did time
Not
pass
that
with
one.
me. Oh, I was going to say. It sounds really nice, though.
Yeah, it is nice.
It's kind of gothic.
It talks about pipes, the sound of pipes, and how would you translate this?
If you had to
Laughter.
translate this, we wouldn't have a problem.
Yeah. Children's and angels and owls and
Owls, okay. Yeah. I found you.
butterflies. Yeah.
Then a raging wind tore the door asunder, whistling, shrilling, and piercing it through me into a black coffin, right? And in the roaring and whistling and shrilling, the coffin burst asunder and vomited forth 1,000 peals of laughter, and from 1,000 masks of children, angels, owls, fools, and child-sized butterflies, it laughed and mocked and roared at me. This terrified me dreadfully. It prostrated me, and I shrieked with horror as I have never shrieked before. But my own shrinking awoke me, and I came to myself.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on that?
Exactly. Well, so we have one of Zarathustra's followers.
Mm-hmm.
He interprets this dream, right?
Yes.
And
life itself interprets to us this dream.
Yeah. He tells Zarathustra, "Is it not you yourself? Are not you the wind who blows open the coffin doors and whatever? And is it not you yourself who is the angel laughter and so on?" And Zarathustra doesn't seem to like that. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah. I mean, my first like impression reading this was that it was like just kind of like like ingratiating unnecessarily, and like you know, it's like the yes man in the church. He's like, oh, or like the yes man to the king, who's like, oh, sire, yes, you when you fell over in the town square, it looked so magnificent and amazing.
Yeah.
Or like reinterpreting something that's actually very bad.
Yeah, that's true. That I think that's the vibe he's going for here.
Maybe, yeah.
Wait, I'm just rereading this one section.
He singles this guy out.
He does, and
let's have a meal. The prophet, however, shall eat and drink beside me, and truly I will yet show him a sea in which he can drown. I feel like that's a bad thing.
So let's piece this together. What is symbolized by the prophet, and what does Zarathustra's response mean? So the prophet, we said he's kind of a downer, and this thing about coffins is kind of it's difficult.
Yeah, he feels down, and then he has a dream where like a dream where like things are agitated, and there's this idea that a coffin is being thrown at him. I mean, that must mean like him being killed or him dying, something happened like that. Yeah. But then, these things come out and mock him and laugh at him. Maybe it's like it's like children laughing at him. That kind of would make sense within what we've read so far. I feel like him in a moment where he's feeling like he's giving up, and then being mocked by these like naive but very like in their own way like wise children that actually know, you know, what is the essence of life, and can laugh in the face of like this horrible thing.
Yeah, and in German we have the word Todesmüdigkeit surfacing here, which is a kind of probably not an actual word, but we have the word Lebensmüdigkeit, which means being tired of life.
Right.
And it's used like if you describe someone as lebensmüde, it means, you know, they're so like eager, they put themselves into dangerous situations, like basically saying, "Are you mad? Are you tired of life?" Like,
Right.
But here he does the opposite. He does being tired of death. We have this life affirming thing coming again. This is just before he talks about having a meal. He talks about, I don't know what's it translated as in English. This would be interesting. But
where is the word? Oh, it's just before.
Yeah, he talks about child laughter out of the coffins and right around there.
So when he talks about the child, okay. So this is after his after one of his disciples interprets his dream, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll go from the laughter of children. You have shown us new stars and new glories of the night. Truly, you have spread out laughter itself above us like a motley canopy. Henceforth, laughter of children will always issue from coffins. Henceforth, a strong wind will always come, victorious to all weariness unto death. Weariness unto death. Of that you yourself are our guarantee and profit. Truly, you have dreamed your enemies themselves. That was your most oppressive dream. But as you awoke from them and came to yourself, so shall they awake from themselves and come to you. So shall they awake from themselves and come to you. Yeah, weariness unto death doesn't sound nearly as like interesting as what you described.
Yeah.
And it's just completely lost in the prose as well.
It is. But so what is interesting with this dreaming of your enemies? What is it? And as you awake.
Yeah, as you come to yourself, they come to you.
I assume we're not. This isn't trying to say that there's other people like his enemies somewhere dreaming of him, like literally, and then, you know, I think it's more like your internalized, I guess, the internalized counter argument to your philosophy, right? Something like that.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe as well, not just like the counterpoint to your philosophy, but the things that are troubling you, right? Generally. And maybe by coming to yourself, if you don't like, you know, coming to your senses, or like coming to yourself, or like realizing the reality of the situation is kind of like the same as confronting what you're like worried about, right?
Right.
And so it kind of seems that like they are saying the same thing. Like you come to yourself, and so your enemies come to you, because it's like you're able to confront them. That could be a way of interpreting
I think that's spot on. And then he wakes up. He doesn't recognize all his disciples around him. But then, you know, as he looks at them a bit longer, he like comes back to himself, and he's like, "Oh shit, okay."
Yeah.
And then he talks about the having a meal with everyone.
Yeah. So that's the prophet, and then the prophet just kind of disappears, or it's never really spoken about again.
Well, he says, he wants to have this dinner with his disciples, and he says, well, and the prophet
Yeah.
shall be there as
Yeah,
well
yeah.
beside me, and so on. I think this is kind of the cliche phrase of keep your enemies or friends close and your enemies closer. Like,
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
he's had this somewhat traumatic dream of his enemies, quote unquote, be that what troubles him or what he thinks might be flawed in his philosophy, and he's just like, okay, well, got it, but I'm not going to be like all doom apocalyptic downy about it, but just take
Yeah,
that into consideration as I move on. Yeah.
well, and in a way, this like, yeah, what he describes, like the experience from the prophet is not like this horrifying experience like the dream that he had. What the prophet's describing is this like lack of life, or like lack of fear, as well as like lack of like true satisfaction or true meaning. And like, by saying like, I will show him a sea in which he can drown, it's almost like, striking the fear of God into him, showing him that there's this like, it's like a Christmas Carol, right? Shaking him from this nihilism by showing him something that's like truly, truly terrifying.
Yes, and it also uses the metaphor of the sea, which is always used, like, I will show him a sea that he can drown in, and we often have the phrase in this book to drink up the sea or something the sea,
for sure,
which kind of symbolizes the beauty and kind of unexplored territory and wonder about Earth. In the original God is Dead, we have the phrase of drinking up the sea or sucking it up with the sponge, kind of taking away the mystery of Earth and explaining it with science. I think, showing him the sea in that he can drown in. So basically all this downy shit about like there's no meaning at all.
Don't say downy.
I said downy. He'll show him the beauty of nature, or the kind of the something that strikes awe in you as you perceive the world.
Yeah, something that you can't drink up with a straw, right?
Yeah, and drowning here, not like dying himself, but I guess this drowning, this nihilism that he proposed. Okay.
Yeah.
I think we kind of somewhat pieced something together there.
Yeah, no, I think that was pretty good. I think we got some good stuff out of that.
Little Frankenstein session. Okay.
Next is Of Redemption.
Of Redemption.
So, yeah, this is the...
I like this one. Yeah, I really like this one.
Me too. So we get, like, he talks about the past a lot in this chapter, in this section. And there's a lot to talk about in terms of the past, for sure. He also talks about, he's kind of lamenting the fact that he's never met he's never met someone who has, like, basically more than one good thing.
So he walks across a bridge and he talks to this crippled guy. And the crippled guy is like, well, Zarathustra is getting more popular, but if he wants to win over the people, then he also has to win over us cripples. And Zarathustra is like, well, as the rabble has it, if you give a blind man an eye, then he'll perceive the ugliness of the world and you won't do him a favor. And if you make we have the Bible illusion of helping someone who is like impaired, right? Or if you make the lame man walk, then he'll just his vices will run through with him.
He'll use it to walk over kittens.
Yeah. So he'll go to the next McDonald's. Which is kind of, it's basically the idea of if you give a homeless person $1, he'll just buy whiskey,
Right, sure. I mean, yeah. There's I don't know. So again, this is a question of in what way and like how and to what extent do you help other people? Like, giving a homeless guy $1, like you have no idea what that money's going to be spent on. And yeah, I mean, it could be like just saved up for fucking cigarettes or whiskey or whatever. But like maybe you could like genuinely help some guy like get off the street and like he could actually become a good person, right?
Yeah, probably not by you giving him $1, but
yeah. I think the most important bit here is not necessarily that he's like, it's not the fact that this guy is, it's hard. It's not really the best way of saying it, but like it's not as if he's lesser than the like average person. But I feel like the cripple guy is more a symbol of the inadequacy of everyone, right?
Yes.
And how, like later in the chapter he says, what does he say?
Yeah, with the inverse cripple.
I see and have seen. Yeah, I see and have seen worse things, and many of them so monstrous that I should not wish to speak of all of them. But of some of them I should not wish to be silent. And they are men who lack everything except one thing, of which they have too much. Men who are no more than a great eye or a great mouth or a great belly or something else great. I call such men inverse cripples. And so, yeah, and I think this is generally kind of like a good point. Like most people, I don't think people are entirely like single. Like there's only one side to them that's like useful, but like we do tend to kind of like lean into the things that we're good at and like lean away from the things that we're not good at. And this like manifests not just in like your abilities, but like the things that you like consider in your daily life and your like general temperament and even like the kind of friends that you make and stuff. Like, we tend to kind of go in a certain direction and neglect these other things. And it doesn't strike me. Yeah, it doesn't strike me that the Superman would be satisfied with that kind of thing, right? No, when we think about like like samurai, for example, being like to bring a fucking samurai. Like they're poets, the artists, the swordsmen, the whatever. All they have. They're all these like all of these like
they like ramen.
They like ramen. There are all these characteristics.
Yeah. No, just to go on a little bit with that quote. So he then goes on the bridge and sees a giant ear. And then he's like, oh, what the fuck? What is this giant ear? And then like, oh, there's a tiny stick at the bottom of it. And oh no, it's a man. And he's like, what the hell is this? And then he's like, no, the people are saying this guy is a genius, right?
Yeah.
So the thing that he calls inverse cripples, the people who are only one-sided, excel in one thing, are culturally deemed geniuses, right? But he's not happy with that.
Yeah.
And this kind of it is alluding to a very similar problem that I guess Emil Durkheim talks about with division of labor, right? So on the one hand, division of labor is specialization, not necessarily just in economic sense, but just focusing on one thing and getting good at that allows everyone more freedom, because then people who are good at their thing can do their thing, and then there's more available for everyone, and the benefits of trade and so on. And society is more free and more plentiful, and and it's easier to do what you want as an outcome. On the other hand, if everyone just does one thing, then everyone is, quite unbalanced, and a fulfilling life is not just one thing.
Yeah,
it's many things.
Yeah, for sure. And what was I going to say? He talks about, Durkheim talks about, like, in order for things to be successful, they have to, like, in order for your division of your role to be like successful or important, it has to relate to the rest of society. And if it doesn't, it's kind of like, it's like when you cut a branch off a tree, or like when a branch of a tree becomes like rots and falls off, or a leaf falls off a tree because it doesn't no longer like serves a function to the greater whole. Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, it's like we've seen this recently with, I guess, the phenomenon of like social media and YouTube and that kind of stuff. If you were like a YouTuber in the early 2000s, it was like, what the fuck is this guy? But now YouTubers are like this cultural thing. It's like, oh, they're influencers, and they're these the new famous people, right? Whereas before it was like kind of outcast of society. But as soon as you monetize it and it becomes like an integrated part of the economy, it's like, oh, I guess they're creating value now, so now we like these people.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, so inverse cripple is really cool image. Just this whole bridge scene gives me Berserk vibes. Berserk.
Yeah, I do know Berserk.
It's just like these kind of ugly, weird creatures around like a medieval bridge. I thought of Prague.
Yeah.
I thought of walking across that bridge in Prague, where it's like super like, with the fog,
Can imagine that.
Cool scene.
So then, next we have a kind of discourse about the past. And also, just so you know, I think we've only got 10 minutes left on the Zoom, so we have to rejoin. But that's okay.
Fine. Okay, yeah.
Redemption. So this chapter is about redemption, right? Nietzsche talks about like the will, human will, and the problem of will, and that whilst your willpower and your will is like a way of liberating yourself, it's constantly reminded by the past that there are things that it can't change, or rather, like the will is constantly reminded that it cannot change the past, and this is something that brings suffering. I'll just read this section.
Yeah.
To redeem the past and to transform every it was into an I wanted it thus, that alone I call redemption. Will, that is what the liberator and bringer of joy is called. Thus I have taught you, my friends. But now learn this as well. The will itself is still a prisoner. Willing liberates, but what is it that fastens and fetters even the liberator? It was. That is what the will's teeth gnashing and most lonely affliction is called. Powerless against that which has been done, the will is an angry spectator of all things past. The will cannot go backwards, that it cannot break time and time's desire. That is the will's most lonely affliction. So this is it's really, really nicely written, this section. It's very easy to understand as well, which is nice. So the will is constantly frustrated by the fact that there are things that it can't change. But the solution to this that Nietzsche tells us is that you have to take responsibility for your past and like responsibility for the actions that you did in the past. And that's the only way that you can create a better future, right? By taking full responsibility for the things that happened.
Well, I guess what does that mean concretely based on this text? Because that sounds good. But
yeah.
So we got first of all, why the will? Why not just a person? Why are we talking about the will?
I think the thing, will is something that, okay, what happens when you talk about the will instead of a person? Will is the thing that liberates people, right?
Is it?
As in, it's if you have, well, yeah, it is, right? Like if your will is the thing that, the only thing that can get you out of a bad situation,
Right, okay.
aside from a change in circumstances which is out of your control.
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
But then he's saying that the will is still a prisoner.
And in that sense, you could even say that the past, what has been, obviously also amounts to your current material conditions and so on. So to not dwell on the past, or for pure liberation of the will, all these, you can say, oh well, I have all these circumstances that go against me, and so therefore I'm not free. But those are all relics of the past. Your current circumstances.
Right, sure. Hey, that's a good point. Yeah, because the whole like, woe is me, this thing happened to me, or I didn't do this thing in the past, is also actually what's making up your current circumstances.
Yeah. So I guess we're trying to make a clear break between, yes, obviously your past and the strength of your will in the past has been affecting the right now, been affecting, but whether it will continue to affect it from the next second is up to your will, right? So it's one thing to acknowledge that it has been influencing it. It's simply, will it continue to?
Sure.
And then there's a lot of talk about like animals. I didn't really. There's a crocodile and a tiger and the poison frog, and I'm like, oh no, what the fuck is going on?
Like fucking Pokemon or some shit.
Yeah.
Just to go back to this point, like, it's clear that the will, like, get it, like the will cannot change the past, as in it literally cannot. Change it can't change the conditions or what happened in the past to affect your current self, right? But it's obviously, like your material circumstances and the circumstances that you live in, like these obviously affect your behavior. The will is the only thing you can have to have a chance of overcoming it, right?
Yeah.
What I find interesting about this, I guess what I'm trying to say is that, like, there's a certain level of kind of willful ignorance, I guess, which is maybe the only way of actually solving this problem.
Yeah. I get.
Like, if you are genuinely in a terrible situation that there is no real getting out of, like, how do you take responsibility for that fact? Like, if you're, like, I don't know, wrongfully imprisoned or something, and like there's virtually nothing you can do about that.
Right. Well, this is the show. What is the fuck is his name? Solzhenitsyn. I can't say it. Talking about being wrongfully imprisoned, not being able to do anything about that. It's like, well, you put the responsibility on the entire state on yourself. That's how you get out of it.
Yeah. Wait, how do you mean? But that's how you get out of it?
Yeah. Or at least that's the best thing you can do in that situation for Solzhenitsyn, I guess. That's the lesson, right? Is it? Like
So that
he
I don't
was
quite.
like he was in prison in the gulags for years, and like I guess wrongfully. There's nothing he can really do about it. And like in his meditation, I guess like what he came to realize is that, well, the only way to look at this that is going to be productive at all, it's kind of the ancient Jewish idea of taking the kind of, whether it be a catastrophe of nature or a catastrophe of the state, I'm just going to put this on me,
Right.
to say, well, how did I contribute in making this terrible state machine? And
Right. Okay.
why are we in this situation? Is it not because I am responsible as well?
And I guess by looking at the ways that you could be responsible, you can probably learn quite a lot.
And it gives, I guess, it gives meaning somewhat to your suffering, or you can frame it as a learning experience, even if it's not necessarily for you personally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I guess if you want to make the real big reference back to the Job story, where God takes everything from Job.
Yeah.
And the answer is, not to curse God or curse nature or curse the state or curse your circumstances or whatever, but to be like, well, I still love God.
Yeah. I don't know.
The idea is to take responsibility, in great tragedy, as a means to not necessarily get out of it, but overcome it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it is. Yeah, like again, it's like what else can you really do?
Exactly.
All right, we have two chapters. We have Of Manly Prudence and The Stillest Hour. So, what is manly prudence? Zarathustra describes his first manly prudence as letting himself be deceived so as not to be on guard against deceivers. What do you make of this?
Good one there, Nicholas. Nice deflect.
Yeah. It's I don't know. I feel like this sort of speaks to the being on guard for deceivers. Like, like the tyrant will always stand with his back to the wall, right, and always have people bow in front of him and shit. And the root of that is paranoia and knowledge that like they're withholding something unjustly and that they don't deserve to have what they have, right? So I guess in to some degree, like this always being on guard, it's like always being on guard against what? Like having your mind changed, or like even being deceived. At least it's like a reminder that you're open enough to believe something that's not true, or open enough to explore things.
So how does this tie in with pride? Because that's the other big motive in this chapter, right?
Well, I mean, I guess pride in your own knowledge and your own opinions.
Right, so you have to be willing to
Yeah. So he says, I'm more considerate to the vain than to the proud. That's his second manly prudence.
Right.
So is wounded vanity not the mother of all tragedies? but where pride is wounded, there surely grows up something better than pride.
Okay, so we know wounded pride. What is wounded vanity?
When I read Wounded Vanity, and I think it's kind of, maybe it's a poetic hint here, the mother of all tragedies, like the idea of like losing your beauty in age, for example. You're losing your youth. You could maybe think of that as wounded tragedy, wounded vanity, wounded tragedy. What's wounded tragedy, Phil? Go.
Wounded tragedy is when Goethe wrote a book and some kids killed themselves.
Yes. Okay. And
no.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, and I think there is something. It is kind of tragic, like when someone is like, I don't know. There's like a desperation in wanting to feel attractive, I think, and especially if you talk about like age, for example, as well. Not even just being attractive, but even just being youthful or being young. Like, yeah. Just picturing like people who were like far too old to be wearing like, I don't know, certain clothes or whatever. I mean, it's okay, I guess, but like people still, but like people, when it comes from a place of vanity, or like when you're doing it, it's not that the act in itself is bad, but the fact that you're doing it out of vanity, and you're doing it because you want these things which you actually can't have, or are things that
that are vain.
Yeah, sure. And then wounded pride is you're like, it's like in boxing, right? Or like people say, like when it comes to like fighting, like everyone like knows what they're doing until they get punched in the face. Or like everyone can like talk the talk until they get punched in the face. And then after that, they're like, oh shit. So being like humbled, right? It's not a bad thing. And being reminded of your like true ability at that time, or like being reminded of your place within this hierarchy that you're trying to climb. And if you're posturing above your own ability, then it's a good thing to be reminded of that.
Okay. What is the third wisdom?
Where's the third one?
It's the first line on my new page, but it's probably different for you.
Awesome.
It talks about the evil, looking at evil. It talks about...
yes, yeah.
Okay.
This, however, is my third manly prudence. I do not let your timorousness spoil my pleasure at the sight of the wicked. Why didn't I fucking Google this word before? Timorousness. This word means to be easily frightened. So I do not let your ability to be easily frightened spoil my pleasure at the sight of the wicked. I'm happy to see the marvels, the hot sun hatches, tigers and palm trees and rattlesnakes. Among men too, there is a fine brood of the hot sun, and much that is marvelous in the wicked. Like
so
he criticizes like, quote, human wickedness, right?
But he's trying to find something redeeming in wickedness.
He is. But this is my point. He's saying that human wickedness doesn't live up to its reputation, and it's kind of like a posturing, maybe. And maybe that's because people can't stomach true wickedness.
Okay. Well, if you read a bit, I just read a bit longer in the chapter, so it talks about the kind of the Übermensch needs his dragon to slay and so on, and your kitties have to become tigers first, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, so I was confusing this. I thought the animals were in the last chapter. No, this is where the animals come in.
Oh, okay.
And your poison frogs have to become crocodiles and all this. It's I guess the idea of having a worthy opponent. Like you can have your great philosophy and your enlightenment and whatever. Think you're the Übermensch, but if you don't have some legitimate evil to test that against,
Yeah, right.
to see if it stands up in the face of evil,
Yeah.
then it's not really that useful, or you don't know how true your enlightenment is, I guess.
It's kind of paradoxical, isn't it? Because it's
yeah,
you know, then this like
this entire book in a nutshell.
Yeah, for sure. It's like, oh, you feel bad about life, you should do things, and then things will get harder, so you should also make things harder for yourself, and then you'll become stronger, but everything else will also become more strong against you, but you should still do it. And it's like, why?
And everything will repeat forever, and that's why nothing matters and nothing makes sense, and
Yeah,
that's why you love life and affirm it.
It's like,
no, back to the chapter. Yeah.
Back to the chapter. Yes.
I think we've summed it up.
Yeah, this is fine. And yeah, like you said, it's a good point. Like this like links up with the eternal recurrence thing that we get in section 3. It is quite cool how, like, as we're going along, you can sort of see how the ideas are built up, and the philosophy, like, sort of. It's not like this is one thing I believe, this is another thing, this is another thing. It's like gradually these things sort of lay on top of each other, and you're like, oh yeah, this makes sense within the world of Nietzsche. So you can read any passage from the book, and it kind of contains a bit of everything almost.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So yeah, the final chapter is called The Stillest Hour. And this is more of like there's no discourse here really, is there? It's just describing what happens. And Zarathustra is like, he says to his disciples, "What has happened to me, my friends? You behold me, troubled, driven forth, unwillingly obedient, ready to go, at last to go away from you." And he announces that he's going back to his cave, going back to solitude. So
why, Zarathustra?
Yeah.
Why must you go? We saw this dream, right?
Sorry?
He saw this dream.
Yes, he did.
We're again talking about the dream. Dude, one should we have to like read Jung and then go back and analyze all these dreams.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Could write a whole book on that. Okay, so he saw this dream where a voice speaks to him, you know, your stillest hour has come and you know it. And this time the dream is very much terrifying, more so than the prophet, I guess. And the voice keeps saying, "You know it, Zarathustra, yet you do not speak of it."
Yeah.
And Zarathustra answers, "I do know it, but I don't want to speak of it."
And the voice is like, "Speak of your teachings and break. Speak your teaching and break." And then he sort of begins to question himself, like, is it my teaching? Who am I? I await one who is more worthy. I am not worthy even to break by it. Then again, someone said to me voicelessly, "Of what consequence are you? You are not yet humble enough. Humility has the toughest hide." So yeah, he's got these things inside him that he's not ready to speak. He says, "I lack the lion's voice for command."
Yeah, we again have the idea of leadership being difficult.
Mm. This reminds me a lot of like you hear. I think I've spoken about this before, but like you hear these like stories about Zen Buddhists achieving enlightenment, and they have
Yeah.
this like whole practice. They have their own temples and stuff, and these people that come to receive their teachings, and then one day they get kind of challenged, and they completely fall apart, and then they end up, rejoining the temple that they founded, for example, and like starting from the bottom, and there is this like this to me feels like a very just normal, like very human experience to be trying to do things and come to these points where you are not really ready to or you just feel like a failure for not being able to go the whole way, or you feel like you don't have the power to like resolutely deal with something. And yeah, so it's kind of one of these moments in the book when there are quite a few, actually, I guess that we've already covered some, but where like we see Zarathustra's points where he's like, it's not just a case of being like supremely strong all the time and like always perfectly dealing with everything.
Yeah,
but it's really just, it's a constant struggle, and the lows are very low and they're very difficult to deal with, and that's kind of the point.
So yeah, the voice says to him, if you want to move mountains, you also have to move valleys. And he answers, well, so far I haven't moved any mountains. In fact, no one listens to me. The people kind of, ignore me. They laugh at me. The voice says, what is off there? Them laughing at you. Why does that matter? You're one who has you have unlearned listening.
Yeah.
And now you dare to like try to lead.
Says, of what consequence is their mockery? You are one who has unlearned how to obey. Now you shall command.
So maybe this is about there's two things. There's one, the idea of you having your, great philosophy, but if no one listens, then it's not going to change the world. Or, if you can't actually make like a real difference in the world, it doesn't matter how enlightened you are.
Yeah.
And the other one is having a great idea or having a great philosophy or being enlightened doesn't mean that you're the fit person to lead and to teach it to others.
That's a good point.
Someone can be really smart and have a really great understanding of something, but they might be absolutely horrible at, teaching it to others or implementing it in a group setting.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like, Einstein, I don't know anything about Einstein, but just because he's like has a great understanding of physics doesn't mean that he's the best person to explain physics to someone like who has no fucking idea about it.
Yeah, and that's like technocracy as well. Like the belief that people like the idea that direct experience with like certain, not direct experience, that's maybe misleading, but like being highly experienced in certain areas makes you what's the word? I mean, like a university professor, like running the government, for example. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or someone having even being in a ministry, being like a successful, like, I don't know, economist, for example, doesn't make you a leader. And actually some of those characteristics can be like detrimental to that. And yeah, this is, I feel, quite obvious, but
yeah. So Zarathustra I can't say his fucking name. Zarathustra. He re-emphasized, I don't want to acknowledge this thing that I know that we're all speaking of, that the reader doesn't know what it is.
Yes. Yeah.
And the voice says, you are ripe for your fruits. No. Yeah, let me let me go again.
Yes. Okay.
It goes, your fruits are ripe, but you are not ripe for your fruits. So you must go back to the isolation, right, of the mountain or whatever. Yeah, and that's how it leaves us.
Yeah.
So he's very sad. He's crying as he walks away. And he once again goes back into whatever he does in his man cave.
Which we conveniently know nothing about.
Yeah. Where the enlightenment happens.
Yeah. And so it's very different, it's very different, goodbye to the one in the first chapter.
Yeah.
The first chapter, it's like, he's like, go away, like, he's annoyed that these disciples are like clinging to him so much, right?
Yeah.
Or that they're relying on him. But it's also, I don't know, it's kind of like optimistic. Or at least he's not leaving them in the same way. It's not like he's not crying.
Predictions for part 3. How is Zarathustra going to come back? Is he going to come back strong? Is he going to come back full of new teaching and vigor? And is he going to be like, I've overcome my beta qualities and now I'm on my alpha mentality?
I think...
Is he going to come back at all to his disciples? I think he probably does, right? I think he does, in fact. I don't remember. I read part 3, obviously, but I don't remember how he comes back exactly.
No, me neither. I don't know. Right. I think maybe he is a bit more like he's been challenged a lot in this chapter, I think.
Yeah.
More so, like in more fundamental ways than the first one, or in more kind of like significant ways, like ways that actually harm him. And he also realizes the consequence of not wanting to pursue the rabble. And like, in a way, he was a bit naive at the beginning of the book for that, I think. And now it's like realizing what the implications of that are. So maybe in the third section, he's a bit more just generally wise. I don't know.
Zarathustra becoming a hero of the people? ? Stay tuned.
We'll see what goes. Don't know when the next episode will be, but we'll get it up at some point. And yeah, if you have any questions or comments or even like recommendations for books, we have the email address again, which is bookboyspod@gmail.com. So yeah, please send us your feet pics.
No. No,
don't send feet pics, please.
And with that, we send you off into the new year.
Yeah. We don't know what we're doing next, but it will be fun.
Yes, and we will come back to part 3 at some point.
Yeah. All right. Happy New Year, people.
Happy New Year.
Boys.